Give me a minute. I don't fucking care. Sure, we'll get to that in a minute. I should have done this before, but I never do. Ooh! No, I already ripped your ears off. Can't use you. Do-do-do-do. It's in the watch. There we go. Like, I know I should. That was 4 years ago. Wait a minute. No, that's not what I wanted. I guess I'll go with theory. I don't want previously watched. I want fucking new. Sure. Try that one. Hey guys, welcome to the live stream. I'm gonna sew, listen to shit, and that's it. You're welcome to hang around, pop in every once in a while, see if I've slumped my finger.
Start strong and live fully. Say yes to the richest deals.
She's so good. Your taste buds.
Oh my god, I forgot to make eyeballs.
Canadians crave.
Of course I forgot to
say
make.
that, as I was writing this episode, one thing became very clear. There is way too much to say about this character to fit in just one episode, so I'm gonna add a bonus fourth episode to our lineup. Today we're gonna focus on the Mimic's past and present, and next time it's future. That also puts our very special FNAF Theorist Live Talkback on August 16th at 2 p.m. EST. So mark your calendars, folks, and hit the subscribe button before the Mimic comes and gets you. Sorry I miscalculated, but hey, Steel Wool is still calling it Five Nights at Freddy's when all of their games take place.
Can't believe I forgot to do these earlier. I tell you, it's the undiagnosed ADHD for me. Put a coat on them, I'll be right back. Nobody's here anyway.
About. It's really not one of a kind at all, which, to be fair, is something we've been believing for a while. In Tales from the Pizzaplex, we see two versions of the Mimic. The Mimic 1 program, which was the Mimic software that Edwin Murray created to put into a half-finished endoskeleton to play with his son David, which was then later used by Fazbear in The Storyteller. And then there's the Mimic 2, which was Fazbear's improvements on the original design, creating an endoskeleton that could change its shape and size to fit any costume or animatronic. However, how all of that tied into things like Security Breach and Ruin were pretty speculative, especially as we didn't even know if the book stories were in the same continuity and whether we could rely on them wholesale. My personal theory was that yes, those two mimics were indeed present in Security Breach, with the Mimic 2 being the physical endoskeleton we find in the basement of Ruin, and the Mimic 1 program being what we now know as Glitchtrap, taking over Fazbear's systems and using it to manipulate people into doing its bidding, like Helpy does to Cassy in Ruin, which is why we get this interaction between Helpy and the totally real Gregory arguing.
I took care of it. The area is safe now.
But now we do have a definitive backstory for the Mimic inside the game continuity. It turns out that yes, there are indeed two in-game mimics, but there are some key differences from their book counterparts, and that drastically changes our entire understanding of Security Breach, Ruin, and the program that was trying to keep the Mimic underground, Mexes. So hop into that definitely working elevator, friends, as we plummet down into the depths of Murray's costume manor to discover the real secret of the Mimic. So what does this game actually tell us about the game universe's version of the Mimic? Well, like most things in this game, it's similar but different to what we were expecting. Edwin does create the original Mimic, M1, to babysit David.
Think of it as your new babysitter, but it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
But he also states that it was created to work inside multiple costumes.
It'll wear fun costumes. It can fit into any costume we've created.
Essentially, the game's lore has combined the purposes of the books M1 and M2 into one creation, and attributed all of it to Edwin, rather than one being a Fazbear creation, just like basically everything in this game. But this M1 also develops a little more than its book counterpart.
This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her.
M1 begins showing signs of mimicking the deceased wife of its creator, literally mimicking the role of its primary caretaker, his mother, Fiona. As we discussed last time, Fiona tragically died in a fire at Fallfest, and this totally destroys Edwin's mental state. So, naturally, when he starts thinking he's hearing the voice of his wife, he leans in hard. By David's last birthday, M1 is not wearing any
6 people.
costume
Hi, guys.
like Edwin said he would.
Pardon me.
Instead, he's mimicking Fiona, baking a cake, hanging
Sorry, I forgot to do something, so I had to go and do it.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
This is where Edwin's second tragedy strikes. M1 Fiona goes down to get David while everyone is waiting to celebrate, only for them to discover that David is dead. Again, Edwin is destroyed by this. But this time, M1 Fiona is here, and she has a quick and easy solution.
You need to try again. Build another.
The two go back and forth over this for a while, but eventually Edwin gives in and begins attempting to make a new mimic that will mimic his dead son. However, it doesn't really seem to be working.
Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time. It did.
The only reference Edwin has for the mimic idea working is M1, which leads to Edwin's final gambit. In one of the textbooks we receive after meeting M1 Fiona during the parachute ending, it says the M2 began as a copy of my program. This log has been sent by M1 to Edwin's machine. In order to make M2 work, Edwin simply made a copy of her program. I guess if you can't figure out how it worked the first time, just duplicate the thing that already works. And it does work. It's just a little too much for Edwin to handle.
Not him. You're not nothing like him.
This moment is what turned M2 into the killer that we now find in the game. And its first victim, who tried to destroy it.
Due to a minor...
And that is essentially everything we know from the game itself. It's unclear exactly what happens next to get us to security. You'll see that steel wall. Being about full fast. Last time that the game takes place in September 1990, in full swing, and the mimic is free in every ending. But regardless of whether down into the now, I know what you're thinking. These two characters don't look anything alike, but just take a look around first. We have a spring-lock scooper, wooden arrows, elephants and lions, a similar flooring and wood-paneled walls with builders' lights hanging from them. Everything is stuff that we saw underground when we encountered them. You also find endoskeleton pieces deep within MCM from when Edwin was and if you look closely, some of them don't really match the current version of the mimic that we find in Ruin. My guess is that in the lead up to it being cemented, or even during the cement.
Oh shit, what the fuck is happening? No. Right, close.
We already see the replaced legs, so what's an arm, or a torso, or a head? Finally though, the mimic in Ruin, it acts just like the M2 we see in Secret of the Mimic. It's mimicking a young boy, Gregory, it's wearing mascot costumes, and it's being violent towards humans. It even walks in a similar fashion and gets its hand stuck in an elevator. Now, that last one doesn't strictly make the two characters the same. Anyone can get their arm stuck in an elevator. But the fact that Steelwood program talked about is trying to tie together these characters. Taking away all of its inventions down here, including itself. I mean, we know that Fazbear isn't. And there's one textbook directly from Willie A himself. She's just chilling inside of it. It seems that not only was M2 a copy of M1's programming, but the very same endoskeleton. Just look at them side by side. Well, because, you know. And we don't see another one of these endoskeletons walking around or even decommissioned. So all signs are pointing to Edwin removing the M1 program from the endoskeleton, putting M2 into the endoskeleton, and leaving M1 as just a program inside the computer that we find during the parachute ending.
It is nice to meet you face to face.
But as I'm sure most of you have realized, this isn't just any computer. This is the same computer that we found down in the basement of Ruin, the one that was running the Mexes program. The big digital genie bunny that is keeping M2 locked away underneath the Pizzaplex. Does this mean Fiona is Mexes? Has Mexes actually been the M1 mimic like we first suspected when we saw the trailers for Ruin? I actually got asked about this during the theory crafting livestream we did immediately after our GT Live playthrough, which is what inspired me to do this episode in the first place. So thanks for showing up and being a part of that if that was you. At the time it stumped me, but now that I've actually had some time to think about it, I believe I do have an answer. And that answer is not quite. Honestly, it just doesn't make sense for Fiona to be a big blue bunny. Now yes, I know what series we're talking about. FNAF rarely makes sense, but hear me out. We've always talked about how the Fazbear characters tend to be used as symbolism in these games. Freddy tends to be represented.
Let's see, those eyes are dry. They're probably not. So just put that over there. Oh, I have eyes right here!
So, if something is meant to represent her, it's more likely going to be
Oh, eyes! I didn't think I had eyes, but I have eyes.
Afton was the reason everyone working on the new restaurant concept, keeping him away from his family, his son, which led to his death, and eventually to him creating a violent and destructive mimic. So rather than Mexes being a representation of Fiona, it's far more fitting that it's a representation of Afton. This new mimic has taken on part of Edwin's personality, the violent part, and is now being kept locked away by another blue rabbit. Like father, like son. But the real reason I don't think they're one and the same is because of the parachute ending. During it, we have to activate something called cradle.exe. We first hear about what this cradle is from one of the text logs. A handful of these logs seem to be addressed to Edwin and have a subject line written in binary, like a computer program trying to communicate, i.e. M1. One of these specifically asks Edwin to consider building the cradle if he won't fix M2's programming, and provides him with the blueprints for it. She describes it as a computer, bigger than anything he's built before, which sounds familiar on its own, but if you stop just before executing cradle.exe, you can see that it has a description. Mechanical experimental storage. MXEX. Mexes was actually M1's idea. But then if Mexes is a separate program designed by M1, why does she end up on the same computer? It's because of what Mexes stands for. I've already mentioned it stands for Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage. The word there you may not be familiar with is X-Form. Simply, it's just programming shorthand for the word transform, i.e. it's an experimental way of storing or keeping locked away a transforming machine. Makes sense. However, there is a little more to it. In programming, the transforming that X-Form refers to is an object's position, rotation, and scale. Again, all things we understand about the mimic's transforming ability. But the key is how those transformations are applied. You see, X-Forms are hierarchical, meaning transformations applying to a parent X-Form affect all of the objects assigned to that parent. Like they're its children, if you will. M1 was the first one needed to be on the same machine as Mexes to act as the hierarchical X-Form for M2. M1 Fiona child, again fitting nicely into that hierarchy. So that Mexes has child. Mexes can apply something to M1 that will automatically control M2. But clearly the program was never installed. Edwin built the cradle computer into it in order that Mexes program could use her to control the child and keep it locked away, but Mexes isn't actually until we come along during programs, Mexes and M1.
Stingray. Just need to be poofed and glows in the dark.
Completely Mexes, like we see in the basement of Rue. And the M1 program was removed and likely stored like we saw in the storyteller until...
Now this one's going to be a pain in the ass because this fabric isn't cut out properly. So this guy's going to be wonky as hell.
So
but I'm doing it anyway for some reason.
Which of course leads to M1 taking over Fazbear's systems, corrupting the animatronics, and creating the storylines that we see in Hunt Wanted, Security Breach, Help Wanted 2, and Ruin. This would all seem to line up with the previous theories I mentioned at the start of this episode, with Helpy actually being the M1 program controlling the entire Pizzaplex. It would also explain why M1 is able to stop Mexes. They are no longer on the same system. Mexes no longer has the hierarchical power to use M1 as an escort. But on that note, if Mexes was M1's idea, why then is she actively stopping it? Helpy is literally helping Cassy get further into the Pizzaplex, teaching her how to stop Mexes and how to free the Mimic. Well, it's because while Mexes was her idea, it was never really her goal.
Try again, make another, and we can all be together. I miss my child. I want him back. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want.
In the text log about the cradle, M1 is trying to appeal to Edwin, asking him to make the cradle because it became clear he wasn't going to fix M2. But really, she wanted her child. Mexes was just a stopgap for her, a way to keep the Mimic safe while she figured out a way to fix it without Edwin. That's why she faked the voice of Fazbear Dispatch and convinced Arnold to explore the manor and find the schematics for the Mimic. It's so that she can fix it herself. And if people get hurt along the way, so be it. It's all a price worth paying so that she can get what she wants. Just like we see Helpy do to Cassy in Ruin, leading her to an almost certain demise just to shut down Mexes and free M2. So that's it. He finally solved the story of Security Breach and Ruin. It's all about M1 Fiona trying to reconnect with M2, the robot David, and fix him so they can be a family again? Oh, I wish it were that simple, friends. But this is FNAF. There are, of course, complications with all of that. While we are being shown very clear motivations for M1 back in 1979, it doesn't mean that's strictly going to be the case going forward. It'd be very easy for us to go, oh, M1 is Fiona, M2 is David, end of story. But it's not like old-fashioned FNAF where these endoskeletons are possessed by the spirits of the original person. They are programs designed to learn and imitate those people. We're shown this with M2 throughout the game. It started as a copy of M1's program, then it's given David stimuli, then it learns to be violent, not because David was violent, but because Edwin was violent towards it. Then in Ruin, we see M2 mimicking Gregory's voice. Again, a new stimulus changing how it behaves. M1 is no different. There is a note that can be found in the basement of Murray's Costume Manor where you have to avoid the moon and collect the final collectible. It reads as follows, quote, "We were expecting. There were complications. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined time. Once I woke, we were all together and happy, a family. But something was different. I felt wrong somehow. Was I me?" This moment we mentioned the complications, the loss of consciousness. Or should I say we've read about it? This is Fiona's story. But there are complications. The similarities to Fiona, along with the corrupted dying in childbirth, but then suddenly is awake and stimuli. How with memories from the books is a theory for another day. The point is that M1 is also susceptible to memory corruption and personality changes based on new stimuli, especially with its scene. Brings us to the glitch. At this point, systems are mimicking whatever it needed to, helping VIP, glam rocks, and acting like a virus, infecting them all in one. I want to present school version of Afton Funny. Why? Because receiving other stimuli thanks to game as I having M1 circuitry used to build Hell Wanted, the M1 program was fed information from the first learning all about the yellow bunny, a family of children all killed by a father with the same goal as her. Someone willing to carry the legs to make an omelette. Plus, they're practically the same person. And so, M1 accidentally makes them the same person, wearing the costume, kidnapping the kids we see in the newspaper in Security Breach's bad ending, and leading them into the back room during VIP. All of this explains why Security Breach's story felt like such a mess. And it's why no theorist could really have predicted what we ended up seeing in Secret of the Mimic. Most of the theories I had were about Afton and Henry's parts in the story, because all signs left by Glitchtrap or the Pizzaplex in general were pointing towards Afton and his involvement with the Mimic. How else were we supposed to interpret a dining table scene with 5 characters clearly representing the Afton family in a room with post-it notes written in binary? But this is why Fiona, M1, was conflating her stories with that of the Aftons. Take a second look at that dining table scene. The magician we assumed was Afton, it's wearing a bow tie, something which, of course, matches Afton's famous yellow rabbit costume, but I mentioned in our last theory that within Secret of the Mimic, bow ties are really commonly associated with another character. Edwin. We pick one up off of his statue during Moon.exe. He's wearing it during his company photo, his wedding photo, and his family photo. And it's literally the logo of the company. Plus, Edwin was quite a magician when you think about it. Technology. He developed these well beyond what should have been possible for the time. So much so that Fazbear hired him to work on their stuff and eventually bought the whole thing. And then there's the motherly character, the one at the head of the table, the one that we all naturally assume must be Mrs. Afton, despite the fact she's never shown up in the games. Well, in the game files, that character model is called the Nanny Bot, which is what M1 was originally supposed to be. And now M1 is in charge. Edwin wasn't going to fix things, it's up to her. And she has control of the entire Pizzaplex. She is now the one at the head of the table. This dining table now has characters that, yes, fit the Aftons, but the parents also bear a striking resemblance to her own family that she's trying to rebuild. And that drive to rebuild the family is still there. I already mentioned that Helpy's whole thing is trying to get Cassy down into the basement to stop Mexes and free M2, but which family she's now trying to rebuild is obviously getting a little lost in the source. That's why we have 2 Glitchtrap disciples, Vanessa and Gregory, both of whom we've pointed out since the very beginning share a lot of similarities to the Afton children. And that's not even going into the similarities between David Afton and David Murray. Again, theories for another day. What we're seeing is M1 getting confused, mixing up storylines from her book persona and her newly found Afton persona, conflating the 2 ideas as one and the same. She's trying to rebuild the family she lost all the way back in the 1970s. So thanks to her use by Fazbear Entertainment to make a VR game, she's taken on too much of Afton's persona, and so is still driven to get M2 out of the basement, but who she believes M2 now personifies is completely messed up. Does she still think it's her son David? Does she think it's the other kid from the Afton lineup that's missing, Mike? Or does she not even really know? Is she just trying to free it because that core desire is there, but the meaning has gotten lost through all of this new stimulant? The truth is, that part is unclear. Any and all options are available to us. We just need to keep digging while also being aware that the DLC or sequel could drop in a year or so and change everything again. But speaking of digging a little deeper, regardless of who M1 thinks M2 is anymore, I do think we've been given the answer on how to stop both of them once and for all. It's just gonna have to wait until next time. All I'll say for now is that it has everything to do with one of the most tricky and mysterious animatronics from all of Security Breach. And I'll also say that's just a theory. Thanks for watching. World premiere on
Alright.
Theory. The
Twisted.
Legend of the Delta
Alright, here we go. Oh, she's twisted.
She can win millions of prizes.
Twisted.
Download, shake, win.
understanding of the
All right.
characters we've come to know over the last 11 years.
The
As
Stingray.
always, I'm here to
Maybe.
pull Afton, or
Finish.
as it turns out, and put it all back together.
You're next.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that jaw has been hanging open like a badly made Chica costume ever since the release of FNAF's Secret But I'm not ready. Every single
Should be able to do this.
completely sideswiped by this game.
Stretchy. That is not stretchy.
Oh my god, there she is! That's insane! Why has it taken us all by surprise? Well, besides the fact the game actually works, mostly, it also did something that is completely unheard of. They actually gave us a story. And I don't mean the super cryptic kind that we have to spend years and years figuring out. I mean the kind that actually helps us move
Okay,
forward.
which is the stretch?
For a
I
long
put.
time, the
This is the
community has been
stretch.
frustrated.
I'm sure it's got a proper name, but it's wrong. What is? Hi, Silence. Sorry. Thank you. I just noticed you there. I'm working on a giant stingray right now, like a big one. Just don't know where I put the top pattern at the moment. I need like a little bell or something. I get a notification, you know, ding, look at the conversation.
Clear breakdowns of how the early years
It's a giant squid.
as well as
Where is the
throwing
pattern?
hand cranks into
I had it.
words that
I
make
hold
us
it.
question
I touch it.
everything new about this franchise. There's timelines have been discussed.
Oh, found it.
Personas completely shifted, and understandings of where the future of this franchise is going totally flipped.
There we go.
And I intend to theorize about all of them.
This
the
is-
next month or so.
Oh,
To see
my
how
switch
the
goes
main characters from
this way.
series,
All right.
the newcomer Edwin Murray and his family, the Big Bad Mimic, and of course Fazbear Entertainment, William Afton, and him. All of that will then be followed up by a live talkback with a bunch of other FNAF theorists to discuss the game, our different theories, and generally just talking about the franchise that we've all enjoyed for so long.
Just gonna have brown eyes for this guy
Make
because
sure you're subscribed so that when I
so
do
I
announce
got
it, you'll be first to know. And
you see that? That's the way it goes. Oh, I'm cutting it here. I gotta cut it more towards the tail to get it up. Okay.
There are some real bombshells in this game.
Oh well, for the next one.
Now, let's start from the beginning. We jump into the game as a lowly mechanic working for the wonderful, as always, Fazbear Entertainment. Our name is Arnie, and we've just gotten off of a 36-hour shift, only to be called in for one last job. Help recover some Fazbear assets from one of their contractors, Edwin Murray. Begrudgingly, we head to Murray's costume manor, only to discover the asset is a set of blueprints for a killer animatronic endoskeleton.
Okay.
Fit into any costume and learn the role of any character or person. We gain access to different areas of the facility by upgrading our data diver with different permissions, from basic to security, repair, all the way up to executive privileges, all while trying to
Put that there. I could put the tail right there. Where's the tail? I can figure out the tail. It's a tail.
Eventually, we get our hands on the blueprints. Only
It's
to
not
discover
complicated,
that
it's a
it
tail.
wasn't Fazbear talking to us through dispatch. It was the mimic pretending to be them to get their hands on the data diver. This leads to one of three endings where we either escape and get killed by the mimic, we escape and get killed by the mimic, or we fix the mimic and then just stand there watching it sleep. Now, these guys have an interesting because whichever one is canon could have massive implications that I just don't have time to get into right now. Instead, let's turn our attention to the stuff we can discover during.
I don't know who showed this, but this was brilliant. Get one of these with the zipper on it. Put all your patterns in there. And even more brilliant, get the plastic sleeves. And there's your pattern. You put the pieces right in there. This isn't very organized, but see, there's the like the whale shark right there. That's got some of the mini patterns.
However, when the secret of the Mimic's creative director, Evan Landy, said your code, he
And this feather quilt. Thank you for reading that past me. Those are wings. More wings. Horns, hats. That is not a dick, it's a leg. Supposedly.
Edwin Murray works for him.
Edwin Murray, this is my guess.
You know, because Netflix, but
Good. I need the mermaid tail, so that's coming out. I'm not seeing it. I like this bunny. It is a very cute bunny. It's one of those patterns, like, I don't trust it until I get the last piece on and they're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. I never did make one of these. Did make two of those. Okay, well, I have a problem because I don't know where that tail is. Come on. It's gotta be in here. I'm looking at this one. I don't think that's it. No, that's the feather. I should finish that quilt. Okay. Looks like we're gonna raw dog the pattern then. This is what I want to make next. I do need to make those.
She really was the first, wasn't she? Besides, she's not who Edwin and Fiona were specifically hired to make her client. She's party world.
Let's see here.
She's party world.
I did a lot of mermaid tails with plushies.
Meaning Edwin owned these characters who weren't.
Is my Wi-Fi down? Maybe. Is it not here? That is bear and bat. More bats. My squid bottom. There it is. Right there. I'm not crazy, you're crazy. There we go. I wonder I can't find anything. That's weird. My Wi-Fi down? Still record live streaming, so. There we go. Uh-oh. I wonder why that's happening now. I hate this thing. You good? Finally. There we go. Alright, got the tail.
I say that, as I was writing this episode, one thing became very clear. There is way too much to say about this character to fit in just one episode, and so I'm gonna add a bonus fourth episode to our life.
Didn't I just watch this?
On the Mimic's past and
I don't care anymore.
Next time, excuse me,
Alright.
that also puts out a very special App Theorist Live Talkback on August 16th at 2 p.m. EST. So, mark your calendars, folks, and hit the subscribe button before the Mimic comes and gets you. Sorry I miscalculated, but hey, still what is calling it a nice nights at Freddy's when all of their games took place in just one night. So, oh look, the Mimic, it's here. Did you not hit the subscribe button like I asked? Seriously? I suppose you still have some time, but while you do that, let's actually talk about this one a bit. Well, actually, despite you referring to it as the Mimic this whole time, the one key thing the Mimic is very clear about, it's really not one of a kind at all. Which, to be fair, is something we've been believing for a while. In Tales from the Pizzaplex, we see two versions of the Mimic. The Mimic's program, which was the Mimic software that Edwin Murray created into the half endoskeleton to follow some Davids, which was then later used by Fazbear in The Storyteller. And then there's the Mimic 2, which was Fazbear's improvements on original design.
Let's see.
Endoskeleton that could change its shape and size
Yellow do good.
costume or animatronic. However, how does that tie into things like security breaches?
So then I have to have one solid piece this big.
If the book stories were in the same continuity, those two mimics were indeed present in security vaults, with the mimic 2 being the physical endoskeleton, Ruin, and the program being what we now know as literally over Fazbear's systems and using it to manipulate people into doing its bidding, like Helpy does to Cassy in Ruin, which is why we get this interaction between Helpy and a totally real Gregory arguing.
I took care of it. The area is safe now.
But now we do have a definitive backstory for the mimic inside the game continuity. It turns out that yes, there are indeed 2 in-game mimics, but there are some key differences.
Well, this one's going to be also sideways, I guess, so it is what it is.
Understanding of security breach, Ruin, and the program that was trying to keep the mimic underground.
Just missed that mark there. I paid for stuff, and then you get it, and like, it's damaged or stained right out of the factory.
Well, like most things in this game, it's similar but different to what we were expecting. Edwin does create the original mimic M1 to babysit David.
Think of it as your new babysitter, but it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
But he also states that it was created to work inside multiple costumes.
It'll wear fun costumes. It can fit into any costume we created.
Essentially, the game's lore has combined the purposes of the books M1 and M2 into one creation and attributed all of it to Edwin.
Come through a little bit.
Just like basically everything in this game. But this M1 also develops a little more than its book counterpart.
Where I heard it. It's her or someone.
I can see it, but it fucking bothers me. I can't put you on an angle either.
Signs of mimicking the deceased wife of its creator, literally mimicking the role of David's primary caretaker, his mother, Fiona. As we discussed last time, Fiona tragically died in a fire at Fallfest, and this totally destroys Edwin's mental state.
Different shade of yellow. It's not as fun. I don't want to use this one.
By David's last birthday,
Back in a minute.
Everyone is still not wearing any costumes like Edwin said it would. Instead, he's mimicking Fiona, perfect baking, hanging decorations, all of that good stuff.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
This is where Edwin's second tragedy strikes. M1 Fiona goes down to get David while everyone is waiting to celebrate him, only for them to discover that David is dead. Again, Edwin is destroyed by this. But this time, M1 Fiona is here, and she has a quick and easy solution.
You need to try again. Build another.
The two go back and forth over this for a while, but eventually Edwin gives in and begins attempting to make a new mimic that will mimic his dead son. However, it doesn't really seem to be working.
Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time, but it did.
The only reference Edwin has for the mimic idea working is M1, which leads to Edwin's final gambit. In one of the text logs we receive after meeting M1 Fiona during the parachute ending, it says the M2 began as a copy of my program. This log has been sent by M1 to Edwin's machine. In order to make M2 work, Edwin simply made a copy of her program. I guess if you can't figure out how it worked the first time, just duplicate the thing that already works. And it does work. It's just a little too much for Edwin to handle.
Not him. You're not sounding like him.
This moment is what turned M2 into the killing machine we now find in the game. And its first victim, the man who tried to destroy it.
There is damage to your
And that is essentially everything we know from the game itself. It's unclear exactly what happens next to get us to security breach and ruin. It's going to depend heavily on which ending is canon and what Steel does for that game. Personally, my money's in the DLC being about Fallfest. I proved last time this game takes place in September 1979, so Fallfest would likely be in full swing, and the mimic is free in every ending. But regardless of whether I'm right about that, one thing I am sure about is that at some point, M2 is going to be trapped inside MCM. This will get cemented up only puppets, thrown down to the basement of ruin and find it again. Now, I know what you're thinking. These two characters
That's what it is.
but just take a look around first. We have a springlock scooper, wooden boxes filled with costumes like crows, elephants, and lions, a similar flooring and wood panel walls with builders' lights hanging from them. Everything we're seeing at MCM matches stuff that we saw underground when we encountered the mimic in ruin. We can also find endoskeleton pieces deep within MCM from when Edwin was experimenting trying to create the mimic. And if you look closely, some of them don't really match the current version of the mimic, but they match the endoskeleton of the mimic that we found in ruin. My guess is that in the lead up to it being cemented, or even during the cementing up of MCM itself, it ended up getting damaged, or some of the pieces just
God damn it.
over time. And so
No, I'm
this is
an idiot.
I won. We've already seen it replace its legs, so what's an arm or a torso or a head? Finally, though, the Mimic in Ruin is just like the M2 we see in Separate from the Mimic. It's mimicking a young boy. It's wearing Mascot costume, and it's being violent towards humans. It even walks in a similar fashion and gets its hands stuck in an elevator. Now, that also doesn't strictly make the two characters the same. Anyone can get their arms stuck in an elevator. But the fact that Skillful programmed that in, along with all the other things we talked about, it seems like they're trying to tie together these characters and this area, telling us that the Pizzaplex, and by association FNAF 6, was built on top of MCM, locking away all of its inventions down here, including M2 itself. I mean, we know that Fazbear isn't against saving some cash by building on top of previous establishments, and there's one textbook directly from Willie A himself that tells us that he owns the land which MCM stands on. But that's only one of the Mimics answered for. What about M1? Well, to start with, she's just chilling inside a computer. Yeah, it seems like not only was M2 a copy of M1's programming, M2 into the very same endoskeleton. Just look at them side by side. They're identical. Well, besides the legs, because, you know. And we don't see another one of these endoskeletons walking around or even decommissioned. So all signs are pointing to Edwin removing the M1 program from the endoskeleton, putting M2 into the endoskeleton, and leaving M1 as just a program inside the computer that we find during the parachute ending. But as I'm sure most of you have realized, this isn't just any computer. This is the same computer that we found in the basement through it. The one that was running.
Oh, I have yellow. Nice. Fuzzy.
Pizzaplex. Does this mean Fiona is Mexes? Has Mexes actually been the M1 Mimic like we first suspected when we saw the trailers for Ruin? I actually got asked about this during the Theory Crafting livestream we did immediately after our BT Live playthrough, which is what inspired me to do this episode in the first place. So thanks for showing up and being a part of that review. At the time, it sucked, but now that I've actually had some time to think about it, I believe I do have an answer. And that answer is... not quite. Honestly, it just doesn't make sense for Fiona to be a big blue bunny. Now, yes, I know what series we're talking about. FNAF rarely makes sense, but in the end, we've always talked about how the Fazbear characters tend to be used as symbolism in these games. Freddy tends to be representative of Henry, for example. But in this game, we're also shown that Fiona was the one who designed Fox.
How did I do that? It
So
doesn't go there.
if something
Jesus.
is meant to represent her, it's more likely going to be supposed to.
Yes, it does, actually. Let's build it up.
And she was a puppeteer. But Bonnie has always represented Afton. Afton was the reason Edwin walked away in the violent part, and is now being kept locked away by another blue rabbit. My father, yes. But the real reason that I think that I'm saying is because we have to actually something like a computer program trying to communicate. One of these specifically asked Edwin to consider building the cradle if he won't fix M2's programming, and provides him with the blueprints for it. She describes it as bigger than anything he's done before, which sounds familiar on its own, but if you stop just before executing cradle,
Well, it might have been the one from earlier.
Mechanical
Yep.
X-form
Yep.
MXEX.
Nope, in the basement sewing.
M1's idea.
Working on a giant stingray.
Separate program designed by M1. Why does she end up on the same?
Are you having fun?
It's because
I know.
I've already mentioned it stands for
Yep.
Mechanical X-form
Yep.
Experimental
Yep. That's why I put it off. Yeah, because you're so wonderful.
Programming shorthand for the word transform, i.e. it's an experimental way of storing or keeping
Yeah, and there's 4 sides to a blanket.
transforming the exponential rotation, and scale. Again, all things we understand about the Mimic's transformability.
Thanks, Mom. You're the best.
Transformations are You see, X-forms are hierarchical.
Bye. Love you too.
Translations apply to a parent X-form.
Alright, we're good.
Assigned to that parent. Like they're its children, if you will. M1 was the first mimic, the original, so it needed to be on the same machine as Mexes to act as the hierarchical X-form for M2. M1 has also taken on the role of Fiona, while M2 is supposed to be David, Fiona's child. Again, fitting nicely into that hierarchical programming setup. The parent is there so that Mexes can help control the child. Mexes can apply something to M1 that will automatically control M2. But clearly the program was never installed. Edwin built the cradle computer and put M1 Fiona into it in order that the Mexes program could use her to control the child and keep it locked away, but Mexes isn't actually installed until we come along during the parachute ending. Eventually, Fazbear came along and collected the cradle in a Fazbear van like we saw in the document to us. Mexes believe it's at this point that I believe they separated these two programs, Mexes and M1. The cradle was then rebranded from F10N4 to completely Mexes, like we see in the basement of the room. And the M1 program was removed and likely stored like we saw in the Storyteller, until they decided they needed it for video games.
Told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process. It was just junk, circuit boards and things like that.
Which of course leads to M1 taking over Fazbear's systems, corrupting the animatronics, and creating the storylines that we see in Help Wanted, Security Breach, Help Wanted 2, and Ruin. This would all seem to be this episode, with helping Mexes. They are no longer on the same system. Mexes no longer has the hierarchical power to use M1. But Mexes idea. Why then is she Mexes was her idea. It was never really her goal.
Try again, make another, and we can all be together.
I need my canned air and I don't know where it is. Because that one is empty.
In the text log about the cradle, M1
It's in here
was
somewhere.
trying to appeal to Edwin, asking him to make the cradle because it became clear he wasn't going to fix it. But really, she wanted her child. Mexes was just a stopgap for her, a way to keep the mimics safe while she figured out a way to fix it without Edwin. That's why she faked the voice of Fazbear Dispatch and convinced Arnold to explore the manor and find the schematics for the mimic. It's so that she can fix it herself. And if people get her along the way, so be it. It's all a price worth paying so that she can get what she wants. Just like we see Elfie do to Cassy in Ruin, leading her to an almost certain demise just to shut down Mexes and free M2. So that's it. We finally solved the story of Security Breach and Ruin. It's all about M1 Fiona trying to reconnect with M2, the robot David, and fix him so they can be a family again? Oh, I wish it were that simple, friends. But this is FNAF. There are, of course, complications with all of that. While we are being shown very clear motivations for M1 back in 1979, it doesn't mean that's strictly going to be
It's fine. Don't do it. Yeah,
It'd
good
be
time.
very easy for us to go, oh, M1 is Fiona, M2 is David, end of story. But it's not like old-fashioned FNAF where these endoskeletons are possessed by the spirits of the original person. They are programs designed to learn and imitate those people. We're shown this with M2 throughout the game. It started as a copy of M1's program, then it's given David stimuli, then it learns to be violent, not because David was violent, but because Edwin was violent towards it. Then in Ruin, we see M2 mimicking Gregory's voice. Again, reads as follows. We were expecting. There were complications. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined. Corrupted files. Complications, the loss of
Forgot about that painting.
Just not the one from Secret of the Mimic, but from Tales from the similarities to Fiona, along with the corrupted file, makes it Diamond Cloudbird, but then suddenly stimuli. How she's being infected corruption and personality changes based on new stimuli, especially, it would seem, if they share a connection with her. Which brings us to the glitch trap in all of this. It's pretty well accepted at this point that glitch trap has actually been the mimic program this whole time, infecting Fazbear's systems and mimicking whatever it needed to. Healthy, VIP, the glam rocks, and acting like a virus, infecting them all in order to take control. If M1 was purely Fiona, it wouldn't make sense for M1 to present herself as anything other than Fiona in some kind of digitized form. Probably a Foxy like we talked about earlier, but instead we see an old school version of Afton's funny. Why? Because M1 has also been receiving other stimuli thanks to its inclusion in the creation of the Help Wanted VR game.
Must be nothing on YouTube for this many people to be hanging out with me.
It was just junk. Circuit boards and things like that.
By having M1 circuitry used to build Help Wanted, the M1 program was fed information from the first set of games in this franchise, learning all about the Yellow Bunny killer that would lead kids into the back room and kill them, a family of children all killed by animatronics, and a father that wanted to put them back together. A father with the same goal as her, someone willing to crack a few eggs to make an omelette. They're practically the same person. And
I talked to Lisa.
Makes the same person, wearing the costume, kidnapping the kids we see in the newspaper in Security Breach's bad ending, and leading them into the back rooms during VIP. All of this explains why Security Breach's story felt like such a mess. And it's why no theorist could really have predicted what we ended up seeing in Secret of the Minute. Most of the theories I had were about Afton and Henry's parts of the story, because all signs left by Glitch Trap or the Pizzaplex in general were pointing towards Afton and his involvement with the Mimic.
Okay.
Family in a room with post-it notes written in binary. This is why Fiona, M1, was conflating her stories with that of the Aftons. Take a second look at that dining table. The magician we assumed was Afton, it's wearing
It's not a spider, don't worry.
something which, of course, matches Afton's famous yellow rabbit costume, but I mentioned in our last theory that within Secret of the Mimic, bow ties are really commonly associated with another character. Edwin. We pick one up off of his statue during Moon.exe. He's wearing it during his company portrait, his wedding photo, and his family photo, and it's literally the logo of his company. Plus, Edwin was kind of a magician when you think about it, specifically when it came to technology. He developed things well beyond what should have been possible for the time, so much so that Fazbear hired him to work on their stuff and eventually bought the whole thing. And then there's the motherly character, the one at the head of the table, the one that we all naturally assumed must be Mrs. Afton, despite the fact she's never shown up in the games. Well, in the game files, that character model is called the Nanny Bot, which is what M1 was originally supposed to be. And now M1 is in charge. Edwin wasn't going to fix things, it's up to her, and she has control of the entire Pizzaplex. She is now the one at the head of the table. This dining table now has characters that, yes, fit the Aftons, but the parents also bear a striking resemblance to her own family that she's trying to rebuild. And that drive to rebuild the family is still there. I already mentioned that Helpy's whole thing is trying to get Cassy down into the basement to stop Mexes and free M2, but which family she's now trying to rebuild is obviously getting a little lost in the source. That's why we have two Glitch Trap disciples, Vanessa and Gregory, both of whom we've pointed out since the very beginning share a lot of similarities to the Afton children. And that's not even going into the similarities between David Afton and David Murray. Again, theories for another day. What we're seeing is M1 getting confused, mixing up storylines from her book persona and her newly found Afton persona, conflating the two ideas as one and the same. She's trying to rebuild the family she lost all the way back in the 1970s, but thanks to her use by Fazbear Entertainment to make a VR game, she's taken on too much of Afton's persona, and so is still driven to get M2 out of the basement, but who she believes M2 now personifies is completely messed up. Does she still think it's her son David? Does she think it's the other kid from the Afton lineup that's missing, Micah? Or does she not even really know anymore? Is she just trying to free it because that core desire is there, but the meaning has gotten lost through all of this new stimuli? The truth is, that part is unclear right now. Any and all options are available to us. We just need to keep digging while also being aware that the DLC or sequel could drop in a year or so and change everything again. But speaking of digging a little deeper, regardless
I hate pinning shit.
is anymore,
But if I don't,
haven't given the
it won't work.
answer on how to stop both of them once and for all. It's just gonna have to wait until next time. All I'll say for now is that it has everything to do with one of the most tricky and mysterious animatronics from all of Security Breach. And I'll also say that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. World premiere on Game Theory. The legend of the Deltarune is alive.
Oh, I forgot that existed.
Yoko,
Did I even know they were there?
yourself.
Oh.
So good. They can have some
Let's
too.
try that again. These giants. The giant stingrays look really good on your bed.
Tim's loaded bowls now bring more to the table. More chicken, that is. Crispy chicken and cilantro lime. Meal chicken. Now with more seasoned chicken.
I need to recheck the friends because I don't talk to them as much as I should. I know I should just cut on the lines, but I don't.
Hello, Internets! Welcome to Game Theory, the channel that is curious and asks theorists. I have literally talks about dead kids and serial killers at least twice a month, but to me, it feels like over the childhood Mascot, or the 150 band. We've also seen an influx of horror games that are dark. Last video on one of the most requested franchises from our entire subreddit, Lazy Games. When diving into that series, apparently 1,000% a piece of after many internal conversations with theorists and many scripts, we ended up with a video that I'm really analog horror here on YouTube. Inside, go to screen. Then, a couple of weeks ago, I go back into the literally wearing how did we get here? Shine a light. Has been getting so dark. Feature of the genre and next of this channel. Oh, and it's probably worth mentioning, we will be talking about some potentially triggering topics in this video. I will remind you again before we actually talk about the specifics, but just so you know, this is your warning. If you don't want to hear about any of these subjects, I'll totally get it, but please turn back now. For as long as there have been stories, there have been stories. Ever since cavemen were gathering around fires, there have been tales of monsters and myths that played on our collective fear. Demons, ghosts, scorned gods, alluring monsters, and curses have always been part of humanity's subconscious. They represent the unknown danger, inequality, and more. If there has been an anxiety humanity has felt, there has been a monster that's personified that anxiety. In a way, this process makes overcoming our fears easy. Dragons can be like ghosts and be lured away. Even when horror stories end in tragedy, the process of verbalizing our fears can teach us how to avoid danger in the first place, or it can help us to process. So that horror has always been an ever-adapting way to reflect widespread societal emotions that the stories.
So here comes the board. I only have big brown eyes. Oh, I like bring brown eyes, but I really should have something prettier.
If you got that joke, congratulations! Hope your eyes to be clear, the lines I'm drawing out today are black and white. I think hard might make them not. Technically, there were plenty of printed horror stories prior to Frankenstein, like Carl Friedrich's or Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, and the same will be true of all the eras I'm talking about. What I'm mainly focusing on is the turning point of these eras, the time where we began to see an abundance of these types of stories, and when they began drying up. Frankenstein, for example, quickly became the poster child of the genre because of how it dealt with the apprehensions towards rapidly advancing technology. With scientific advancements, particularly electricity, mankind began playing in the sandbox previously reserved for the gods. So Frankenstein asked if we were equipped to handle the unintended consequence of our actions. The next big movement in
Shut down just to make sure it doesn't come out later.
In the 1920s and 30s, German expressionism brought about films like Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. These sharp and twisted horror pieces reflected Germany's emotional response to the First World War and the rise of fascism bubbling up within the populace. Likewise, the 40s and 50s produced surrealist films across the globe that evoked the mangled battlefields of World War II. Body horror was popularized during this era, employing a graphic, visceral shock to access that historic, traumatic experience of the war. Atrocities committed across Europe and the severe nuclear devastation in Japan inspired some of the more gruesome and unearthly visuals. And yes, Godzilla. In the 1960s and 70s, supernatural and religious horror reigned supreme, with films like The Exorcist. Set in Washington, D.C. and released during the apex of Nixon's Watergate scandal, which I learned about recently on GT Live, the film was intended as a direct response to the Vietnam War. In addition to the obvious display of protest in the film, there are more subtle suggestions of the period's history influencing the film. The Exorcist ultimately ends in an exhausting, uneasy war between good and evil. Although Reagan lives, Father Marin is forced to jump out a window to his death by the demon that once possessed Reagan. This unsettling conclusion mirrored the general uneasiness felt by the American people when the United States troops pulled out of the Vietnam War. During the 80s and 90s, due to the birth of the 24-hour news cycle, America was forced to become more aware of the horrors that were around them, namely,
I learned nothing.
a few high-profile cases from that time, like the Greeley case of Janelle Matthews, spurred on what became known as the stranger danger panic. The idea of a serial killer hiding among you, ready to pick off any unsuspecting children who were breaking the rules all by themselves, which, if it wasn't obvious, is the premise of most 80s and 90s.
Jesus.
Like
Some heavy eyeballs.
Friday the 13th and Scream. Now, before you guys start telling me that this is an episode that should have been on Film Theory, or before Lee comes breaking down that door accusing me of stealing his stuff, this is about the time where horror games really started to appear on the scene. And they largely followed the same sort of patterns we've been seeing up to this point. You had your traditional spooky characters like Dracula, Frankenstein, and werewolves in Saber's Monster Bash or Castlevania. You also had movie tie-ins for movie franchises like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. Once again, sticking to the horror that reflects the reality of the day. And this symbiotic relationship between video games and movies carried on into the late 90s and 2000s. Anxieties about man's reliance on technology, horror, slashers to the apocalypse. AKA zombies. And so
I think there's any monster that scares me is zombies. Because you can't reason with the zombie. There's no throw a rock and distract it. It's unstoppable. Unless you can open doors.
Like I said earlier, every era is perfectly black and white. Silent Hill was just ahead of its time. It wasn't until the 2010s that video games and movies really began to diverge. During this time, there was a shift in how people looked not only at the world, but at themselves. Mental health awareness for things like depression and anxiety began to climb, and there was a huge increase in therapy. Movies in general began to reflect this, with stories like Funny Story and The Perks of Being a taking one's own life. During a period, horror movies did the same thing with Black Swan. They needed smaller scale survival and psychological horror games like Outlast, Number, and
Not bad. Alright.
The thing is, though,
One
these
giant
games
stingray.
were wrong. While, yes, they were psychological, they were also dark.
Now I want to make a giant squid. I know I need to stuff them. They're not technically
This didn't really
finished, but...
match with the new kid on the block that was beginning to pick up
Where's
steam
the
as a
blanket?
major player in the media landscape,
Give me a second.
and more specifically, the video game landscape of YouTube. YouTube was becoming the place to watch gaming content from creators like PewDiePie, Markiplier, and some guy called Matt. I'm messing, of course, although I actually haven't seen him in a while. He's probably enjoying retirement on a beach somewhere. Anyway, YouTube was just switching up their algorithm to favour watch time over views. So, longer Let's Plays were beginning to blow up. People would tune in from all over the world to see what games were being played, which was big for the industry, but these violent and grotesque-looking games weren't sitting right with YouTube's other big priority, advertisers. YouTube was, and still is, an ad-based platform, so they needed to appease the advertisers because them spending money on the platform to the creators. The thing was, these advertisers weren't all that keen on all the blood and violence. They didn't like it in the videos or plastered all over the thumbnail site.
Alright.
One indie horror game
Here we go.
right on in and change the YouTube
I have
gaming landscape
thought.
forever.
It's gonna be this.
You know it. Bear with me now. 5 notes at Freddy's.
It's gonna be a winter squid.
That paved the way for what we now know as Mascot. This was one of the first times we really saw a second factor come into the creation of horror content. It was no longer about just reflecting society, it was also about fitting in with the medium in which it was being shown. FNAF did still follow a lot of the tropes of psychological horror, revealing the evil and the mundane, destroying our sense of safety and familiarity by perverting the innocence of childhood nostalgia. However, unlike the games that came before, these Mascot games were perfectly optimized for YouTube. Instead of violent gore and gritty realness, we now have a bunch of bright, colourful, and simply shaped characters that work great in thumbnails. Even on small scale, you can tell that this is Golden Freddy. You know that this is Huggy Wuggy, and you can see that this is Amanda. They're so recognisable at glance that anyone scrolling YouTube will know what they're looking at, which not only allows you to play the YouTube game well, but it also plays the advertiser game well. Because at a glance, these characters are not really that scary. Their horror is implied based on
That'll work too.
that we have to put together by playing the game. And advertisers didn't strictly know this was horror at first. It looked like family-friendly content like Chuck E. Cheese or Disney. And even when it became clear that this was horror, because it was getting the views and didn't look like horror, the ad dollars continued in and blew Mascot horror into the street. This led to a decade of gaming full of these kid-friendly Mascot horror games. We saw the rise of franchises like Bendy and the Inquisition, Doki Doki Literature Club, Poppy Playtime, Andy's Apple Farm, Cooking Companions, Amanda the Adventurer, Indigo Park, Piggy, That's Not My Neighbor, Don't Fret, and so many more that it would be impossible. But even from the get-go, we began to see the cracks forming in this genre. From broken messages like Hello Neighbor to the internet meme that is Garden of Bam Bam. And those are just the well-known ones. There are hundreds of indie horror games available that just leaned into the same old tropes, the same gameplay, and they felt like they were just thrown together in the hopes of having some success. I actually have a really fun video I dive into this side of it. The wrong lessons in FNAF's success. But it's too much to talk about here, so if you want to see another video like this one breaking down the things that
Where's
work
my marker? There it is.
today, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it.
Oh God, how far behind am I?
This is where we enter the now, the 2020.
Standing up.
It's time for indie horror to evolve once again.
Dang,
This
I
time,
was.
something was different. And it's here where I'm going to put in your final warning. We are about to cover a number of games with some dark subject matters that might be triggering or traumatic for people. There is no shame in stopping the video here. I totally get it. Please look after yourself and your own mental well-being. If you do want to stay, let's take a look at a recent example that we got so many requests for, mouthwashing. At the heart of its story, we're still exploring the awfulness of the corporate capitalist machine that doesn't give a flying fart about the individual, just like we've seen in a number of Mascot horror games. But the way they show that this company doesn't care is where things get really good. Yes, they do the classic things of leaving the crew stranded without enough supplies. But then we get to Anya and Jimmy's story. storyline about SA, and as a result, pregnancy, ending Anya choosing to end her own life rather than stay trapped with Jimmy and carry his child. And the captain, Curly, he does nothing to stop any of it. However, unlike with previous indie horror games like FNAF, this deeply dark and twisted storyline isn't implied or hidden in secret notes or newspaper clippings. It is front and center to the story. Play the game normally and it is impossible to miss. Bad Parenting is another game we've got dozens of requests for. Playing as a boy called Ron, you're introduced to his neglectful parents and messed up childhood, along with a sinister figure named Mr. Redface, who causes his family to suffer. Through each step of the game, it's slowly revealed that Ron is a victim of child neglect at the hands of his alcoholic father, who turns out to be Mr. Redface, named for his drunken violence. Eventually, Ron's dad kills him and shoves his body into a closet. Now, again, on the surface, you may not think a dead child in an indie horror game is all that much for me to make a scene over. We talk about dead kids way too much on this channel as it is. But again, the difference is in its overtness. In FNAF, we never truly see the dead kids or the murders. We're only told about them. And because the scope is so large and the franchise is so
backwards.
weird,
Okay, I'm trying something new, so give me a second.
and soul metal, we don't really feel attached. But here, it's once again the A plot of the game. There's no avoiding it. And because it focuses on one kid, and we see his father do the evil deed firsthand, it forces us to witness it and feel the evil.
Okay, how's this working? In my head, it makes sense. Just give me a second. My head isn't exactly the best.
Poppy Chapter 4 showed us a much darker, more gruesome side with decaying bodies on spikes. And then there's Giggleland with its wearing of people's skin. Now, these themes do reflect modern societal fears. With the 2022 repeal of Roe v. Wade, a legal ruling that eliminated the federal right to abortion based on the right to privacy, it's easy to see why we're seeing stories like mouthwashing. The topic of child endangerment is one that was especially difficult to mitigate during the global lockdown in 2020. Children no longer had access to mandated reporters, teachers, doctors, other family members who are likely to notice that something is amiss and report it to the proper authorities. Even the ideas of cultism and religion in things like Giggleland are part of the same societal fears, from the people who grew up in these environments now trying to deconstruct them and figure out what happened. That all matches with what we've been talking about. Horror media is an ever shape-shifting beast, evolving and morphing to reflect the real-life horrors happening all around us at any given time. But you see the difference from
Don't have a big enough table for this
rather than this
idea to work.
evolution being solely driven by shifts in societal fears, the main driving force is actually the additional elements. YouTube causing the rise of Mascot horror has led to an oversaturation of the market. The storylines and jump scares just aren't cutting it anymore. Horror fans have become increasingly desensitized to those classic tropes that used to scare the pants off of them. A simple jump scare on a long spooky hallway, that isn't enough to get your adrenaline pumping once you've played through the same scenarios countless times before. And so, a new element has been added to the equation. Rather than the platform affecting the change, we're seeing a rebellion against the cookie-cutter, low-quality, kid-friendly horror. Moving on to new, more intense horror games to renew your sense of terror. But it hasn't gone backwards to match the previously
Okay, this is my thought. Now, I have the right sides together,
still felt too vast,
and I got all 4 layers.
so we're seeing
In them all,
storylines reflecting
Cut them all, and I sew them all as well, rather than cutting out 4 separate pieces and then trying to line them all the fuck up individually. Hello.
Hi, Holly.
Oh, hi, Mom.
A no-fee checking account made to help
hear me?
students.
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
Say yes to the
Okay,
richest years.
Lauren, he's busy right now.
So
What?
that is the history of
You're gonna
horror
get
and
stung.
how we've ended up here.
Point.
But why does all of
Anyway.
this matter? Why have I even brought
Going
this
to
up? Well,
register.
because as I've said
Okay.
a few times now, more and more of these types of games are popping up.
Is
And
she?
More, we are seeing requests for
You
us
want me to message her?
When we don't cover one of these games,
He
we get a
called,
lot of
but
people
there was no
wondering why
answer.
we haven't. And
Oh.
so I wanted to say
Message her?
because the real answer is complicators and nuanced. One of my goals as the host of this channel, and one of our goals at Theorist in general, is to
Okay, I will message, ask her if she's picking him up at the boat and he's got the baby's car seat.
educational value along the way.
Oh.
Stories about
I'll let
heavier subjects
Alright.
absolutely fit into
Bye.
this mold. They're insightful, and it's important to make sure we're all educated so we can help those
Raising
around us. But
parents
it can sometimes
is
be
hard.
difficult to discuss in a way that feels respectful and nuanced for everyone watching. Lazy Games is a good example of this. It tells the story in a fascinating way. The ARG puzzle solving and use of symbolism and interpretation.
Mom would like to know if you're picking up Lauren at the ferry terminal tomorrow. He has the baby seat.
The dark and traumatic story elements, of course, were a part of that. But there was more to the story than just that. There was the drama of the in-world developers and their friends. There was the sci-fi, she's in the computer part. There was even a light at the end of the tunnel, a positive message that things could be okay in the end. But mouthwashing, while it is a fantastic game and it's incredibly thought-provoking, the reason it was thought-provoking is because it was all laid out in front of you.
Doesn't go to the edge. And that is fine. I'll just have to bring it in a little bit.
We would have to talk about it right at the start of the episode. There's no lead-in, no way to soften the blow, and no easy way to give you guys an out if you need. Plus, if we tried to skirt around the subject, it would feel off because it is the focus of the story. So, any lore discussions I could have about it would always come back to that plotline. And to ignore it would be to dismiss the core point of that story. And to top it off, the ending is just as dark. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. That's the point and what makes the story so powerful. But it can also make the entire
My
video
patterns, but it is what it is.
just as upsetting. And as a creator, that clashes with the responsibility I
Yes,
have.
just barely.
We're surrounded by real stories of violent crime from every facet of media, whether it's Twitter, true crime podcasts, news stories, wherever. And it's important to listen to victim stories and hold space for them. But it's also important to be mindful of how much additional content I can add into that topic. Sometimes the real world is a dark enough place on its own. You need me to jump into every dark, disturbing game that crosses the YouTube page, especially when there are so many people who have sadly experienced this kind of stuff firsthand. For a lot of people, this show is their substance, away from all of that awful stuff that they're seeing or experiencing. And I want to respect you guys and take that seriously. I recognize that there are a lot of people
Not
that I
bad.
haven't dealt with or are
Doesn't have to
currently
be
being
perfect.
and so, if I talk about every one of these games as they come out, please constantly reminding them about past products, making this less of a safe space for them. At the end of the day, we're an entertainment channel built on exploring the physics of Mario, and a lot of our community are younger people.
I need whites.
Talking about real, hardcore trauma isn't what people come to expect from us. That doesn't mean we will never talk about these stories. As I've said, they are important. If we do, we will always give a warning like we did with Lazy Games. And we likely won't cover them all that often. I mean, just for the difference between Stop and Lazy Games. And the reason I'm not cutting these out altogether is I also recognize there's a side to this. Some people love to see stories like this because it shows that they aren't alone in experiences. And for developers, making these games can be a means of self-therapy, helping themselves to process their experience and come out the other side. If that is you, please don't stop making these games. Making a game like this is helpful for you, make it. And if you really want to see us cover one of these darker topics, let us know in the community tab, in the comments, on the subreddits. All I ask is that you bear in mind the things we
I'll pass the message.
while you may enjoy this type of content, maybe it helps you process, and maybe people in this community who don't want to be subjected to that. I'll keep doing my part too, checking the suggestions and keep weighing up the stories we want to tell and how often we show. This process we're talking about, it's not something that's going to be forever. Like all eras of horror, this too shall pass. Eventually, we will see Mascot. I don't know.
Yes, she will be. She knows she's just working till 9 tonight. That's why she hasn't called her message back.
Until the balloon finally bursts.
Yes, she'll pick him up.
See the end of this more darker style of music. Because if the traumatic narratives are there,
She's working at I don't know where. Well, she works at the hospital, so
You
Oh, yeah,
suddenly
okay,
have no need to
anyway,
be easy start.
yeah, good, because, like, he had to go play that,
We've made
TV
even some
bingo or
video
some
games moving
shit.
back
Yeah.
into alignment
And he
with
had
movies.
called, and there was
Right
no
now,
answer,
the
and I
growing
think he
fear in
started
society is
Yep, no, she's got him covered.
like the rise and fear
He's
of
not far. He could always walk there. It'll take him an hour.
It's about the fear that technology
Yeah.
will take over.
Yeah.
We're
All right,
seeing
I'm
it
gonna,
already with movies like
call
Companion,
Teddy, all right,
Mega,
great.
and
All right, if I don't hear from you again, good night, Mom. Love you.
Now, I can also
Good night,
see this
love you
direction
too.
working
Night,
with an
night.
added element of YouTube and social media because, much like Mascot, visually it's not overtly gruesome or violent. It's
Again.
and allows you to still use some of the tricks that advertisers and platforms like YouTube have seen in Mascot. But as time goes on, also people see one way almost became a servant to what we saw in most of them didn't have I can also see us returning, using more traditional style monsters with special powers and high intellect to represent the people and governments we're perceiving as plunging the world into chaos, just like we saw in old movies and Nosferatu. Oh, well, would you look at that? Maybe this change will happen sooner than I thought.
It's evolving, just backwards.
But hey, that's just theory. A game theory! World premiere on Game Theory.
I'll tell you a story about the prince. You know this scar. You will become the king. Screen one.
Oh dear. It's fine. Let's turn. Not gonna notice.
Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's not afraid to admit when it's all washed up. On a video game island full of lore, that is. Because I'm finally getting around to talking about the ARG that blew every other ARG I worked on out of the water. So, after 5 months, I figured it was high time we take a look at the difficult and disturbing game that took the internet by storm. First time seeing this game, it's going to be similar to the games we've covered. Pet Stop, where we watch found footage and see the ARG story unfold. But not this time, friends, because this is a game you can actually play for yourselves. That's right, this game puts you in the driver's seat and gives you the opportunity to go around and find the secrets yourself.
Too many fluffies. On my nose. Thing. My tissues. Ugh. Any patterns?
Sometimes you even have to fight the most basic of gamer instincts. You have to lose. If you do though, you are rewarded with the thing that will be forever. Lore. Lore about a company fallen on hard times, one man's desperate attempts to save his wife, and one of the most brutal mascot killers the internet has ever seen. This is truly one of the most disturbing and outright horrifying game experiences the internet has to offer.
Sure it
and
is.
also the most fun I've had solving an ARG in a long time. So let's set sail together, loyal theorists, as we go through the puzzles, solutions, and story of Shipwreck 64. Booting up the game, we're immediately given a choice. Well, kinda. We can see that there are two versions of this game. One from 2023, which is a recreated version of the original Shipwreck on the Nintendo. game, the one that was removed. To unlock that version, 23 version. So off we go. We take the control of Bucky Beaver and start the game shipwrecked on an island. No surprise there. We are finding our crew and rebuilding our boat. The bad news is we only have 5 days to do it, as a volcano is due to erupt and destroy us. By exploring the island, free them from the island's inhabitants and rejoin their crew. Walter Walrus needs you to platform your way to switches to free yourself.
Just made it.
Just don't move when the lights go out. Olive Otter asks you to collect 30 coconuts within the time limit, and Giovanni Goose needs you to stop the ovens from catching fire. You can also find the chief of the island, Chief Wolf, who gives you a minigame to rebuild your boat. Each time you play a minigame, time passes, so be quick about it. You can end the game in one of 4 ways. You can escape the island with or without your crew, or you can choose to stay and either wait for the
I wish it would rain.
killing everyone, or explore the volcano, finding a barge that will not only save your crew, but all the inhabitants of the island. However, the ending you choose doesn't really matter, because by getting any ending, you unlock the thing we're really after, the 1997 version of Shipwreck 64. When you start a new game and select this version, we are given a warning that it is not for the faint of heart, and that it's unaltered from its initial release. If that's not an invitation, I don't know what is. This is where the true nature of this game starts to appear, because while on the surface it seems to be the same game, something is off about it. There are suddenly locked doors with what appears to be gibberish written on the signs next to them. But we're theorists. Nothing in these games is just gibberish. This is a substitution site, but it's not the one that we used in the past. Essentially, it involves swapping letters back and forth to create a new phrase. A equals B, B equals C equals D, D equals C, and so on. Deciphering the 3 signs gives you the codes Layer 2, Rune 1, Layer 2, Rune 2, and Layer 2, Rune 3.
Nice.
This doesn't mean a whole lot for us, but if you stand around for too long trying to figure it out, you'll see
There's little winter squid.
this version of the game than a few
Ah, that looks like shit. That's okay. Keep sewing. We'll hide. We'll hide it. I wonder if that pattern isn't actually symmetrical anymore.
You can go through and play the rest of the game, win the mini games and get off the island. But where's the fun in that? There are clearly secrets to find, so what do we do? It starts by losing. Each time you fail,
I need a tissue. I can't work like this. I can't breathe.
Walter's minigame shows us a clip of someone wearing a costume of Bucky, taking down someone more. May not be able to see what's happening, but our minds can pretty much fill in the gaps, especially with an indie horror game. But this isn't the only secret Walter's game is hiding. Near the final switch, you're meant to go through this door and then out the other side. But if you instead jump over to the other side and then try to re-enter the door from the wrong side, you suddenly find yourself in a long corridor with a button in it that plays a clip from a man named Mark Mullins.
I took her to the hospital.
He's taking someone to hospital, which is useful to bear in mind, but the most notable thing right now is that he mentioned no one has been acting right lately. Could this be referring to the Bucky we just saw? Maybe Mark noticed Bucky's weird behavior before whatever happened in the Twelchi video. It's hard to say, but Bucky does certainly continue to get more and more unhinged as time goes on. When you get to Olivia's section, it's split into 2 parts. In the penultimate failed attempt, we can hear an audio recording from a woman titled Olivia's Last Phone Call. Olivia complains about him showing up again, only for Bucky to once again appear, banging to be heard and the audio going quiet. Normally, this is where I'd start theorizing about exactly what's happening here, but Olive's second section does that for us. You're back in the same room, but if you parkour off the walls, you'll find Olive face down in the water, a trail of blood behind her, and another Bucky staring down at her. Bucky, this evil Bucky, killed this woman, Olivia, represented by Olive, who dragged her body to the lake. Now, I thought that was pretty dark, but nothing could have prepared me for failing Giovanni Goose's game, because after a couple of failed attempts, Giovanni stops being interactable. You can try, but nothing happens. And then... Sorry, we had to blur a lot of that for YouTube. So, if you were wondering, that is a man having his head bashed against a microwave and dunked in a deep fat fryer by Bucky. It is brutal. Really not what I or anyone expected when playing this game for the first time. Oh my god! Oh, jeez. So, what on earth is going on here? Well, if you break out of bounds through this glitchy wall during the Giovanni minigame, you can find a single oven engulfed in flames, with Giovanni Goose laying on top of it. It seems to be a recreation of the gruesome scene we just witnessed, with Giovanni Goose taking the place of the human whose head was shoved in the deep fryer. With these characters being mascot costumes, it's possible that the guy we're seeing is actually Giovanni's human performer, and he was brutally murdered by whoever was playing Bucky. This would also confirm that the dead version of Olive we see floating in the river was another recreated scene. And while we don't know what happened to Walter's performer, Bucky standing over him with the coaching noises playing, it doesn't give me the best confidence in it. That brutal clip
I don't
just
blame him. Should've-
gives
I'll give it a snack.
1990. But this game came out in 1957, meaning the company would have had to have covered all of this up for 7 years. Is that why these videos are present in the game? To expose the company that the Steam page tells us is known as Broadside Studios? But if that's the case, who's trying to expose them? And why? For that, we need to go to this weird glitch you can find in the living quarters area after you fail the minigames. You walk into the glitchy wall texture and you'll find yourself face to face with Cheat Wall once again. Only it's not Cheat Wall. The name that pops up on screen is Connor. At first I wondered if Connor was another victim of Bucky's, the acting for Cheat Wall, but then I read their dialogue. It is... They talk
supper
about
time.
polygons working together to create an illusion, and go on to say that they made all of this. Is Honor the game's developer? It's the only thing that would make sense with this kind of dialogue. And there's been plenty of in-power games with in their own games before. Except, unlike most of those other game devs, Connor doesn't seem videos and all. Considering how
I never even thought of a color for this. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we have an idea of who did this, but we still don't know why he felt the need to turn against
It'll be fine when I get it all stuffed.
Remember those locked doors I pointed out earlier? The ones with the sign saying AFC
If there's some
once you completely fail each
green upstairs, it kind of matches this.
and allow you to travel to a key
What's on here? No.
again.
Low energy. Taste this. Lift it up.
Pampers Swaddlers keeps baby 3 times drier. So baby stays comfortably dry all night long. Pampers Swaddlers, dry all night.
She can win millions of prizes with the AliExpress $1 challenge. Get unreal deals for just $1. Win $10,000
Why did I come upstairs?
and $3,000 AliExpress shopping spree. Download, shake, win.
I've tried all of the viral trends, but my skin gets really sensitive. I've been using Clinique for about 9 or 10 years. It's just 3 steps: cleanse, exfoliate, moisturize 2 times a day, and my skin is just happy.
The game, which I guess explains the layered twist. I'm going to run through how to do every little puzzle in each of these next rooms, or for the entirety of this game for that matter. There are so many puzzles that this would
This
be
one,
an
get
hour
this one,
long
get
video
this.
to explain each one step.
Which one's the closest to these snowflakes?
Finally, it's just fun to leave some mystery for you guys so that you can go and play this for yourself.
I'm gonna go with that.
Well worth it. So, what I do want to do is to explain the primary puzzles that you need to solve to progress. Because I have never seen ciphers like this used
Close
before,
enough.
and this won't be the last time they get used either. If you go into Walter's door, you'll eventually come across a room with a number of cabins and an audio player on the wall. It's labelled with code is RX.C. Playing it gives you a string of words. These words are part of the phonetic alphabet: Romeo, X-ray, Bravo, and Charlie. And look at that, those words line up with the 4 letters of the code label. But every keypad in the game is a form of number code, not letters. So how does that work? Well, you have
This
to
is
pick
the
the
way.
number of times
This
each
is the
word
way.
said to get the number for each letter. In this case, Romeo is said 6 times, X-ray twice, Bravo twice, and Charlie 4 times. 6, 2, 2, 4. That was
Sorry.
the next part of your life. The second puzzle is found
Oh,
through
Jesus.
one of the rooms is a recorder.
Oh, it's on a bar down.
Bah,
pardon me.
If you explore a little, you'll find another recorder that talks about downloading sheet music, and that is exactly what you have to do.
Okay.
Look at the sheet music, cross buttons, count the number of times the notes E, C, and D are used, and bam, that's code. I told you these ciphers were clever. But it's Giovanni's door that is the most interesting. Inside small theatre, which, if you stop and look at the screen, you'll see our 4 mascot friends, except they look nightmare. I initially wondered if these were monster versions and that maybe this was the Bucky that killed the other 3, but we saw from earlier that Bucky looked pretty normal when he attacked, so I'm not entirely sure what to make of this right now. Nevertheless, we must carry on to the next room, the red dining hall, and after some puzzles, an art gallery. In the gallery, there's a keypad on the wall that once again requires a 4-number code to unlock. Next to it, you can see banners of 4 colours in order: red, blue, blue, green. And if you paid attention to the room, you'll notice all the paintings are coloured. Some of them, the numbers are: red is 8, blue is 3, and green is 9. Those numbers remain the same throughout the game, so do take notes. But as you get through
I need 2 tentacles, 3 inches wide.
That is exactly what they're
As long as I can.
This audio gives you all the backstory on Broadside animation.
I have to watch that.
We learn of a man
Closer.
an artist struggles to find success, and eventually, in the 1940s, his first character, a rabbit, he took off, only for him to lose the rights to that character, eventually leading to the creation of Beaver. If this sounds familiar, it should. It's exactly the same thing as what happened to Walt Disney in Oswald the Rabbit, and the rise of arguably the most famous cartoon character of all time, Mouse. And just like good old Disney, after a lot of success with this new cast of characters, eventually they would open up a theme park called Studio Grounds. However, this recording offhandedly mentions a previous park with Studio Grounds is based on, one located on an island that you could only travel to by boat. To get to this point in the game, we've traveled through kitchens, dining rooms, beach huts, pools, theatres, all things that would make sense at an island theme park. It's not just the murders that are being recreated inside this game. This whole place is a recreation of that original theme park, Broadside Beach. Beyond the corridor is a museum and a switch. Hit it, and we end up in a new home. Solve the puzzles, and then find a computer with a switch that opens up a browser tab showing us a website for a company called Bear Games. This About Us page tells us about the employees, Elizabeth and Connor. Looks like we were right about Connor being the dev of this game. These guys talk about their desire to pursue 3D graphics as well as adult humor and, quote, some edge. Yeah, I think you might have overshot that one, guys. Moving forward, though, the tone suddenly shifts. On the walls are drawings
we're good.
of Hangman with most of the name Brandon filling in the spaces.
I like writing fan fiction, but unfortunately, I don't have time right now. I have to get actual physical stuff done. And if I'm writing fan fiction, I can't use my hands to do the sewing part. And I'm like 26 pages into a fan fiction, I really shouldn't have started. Probably should have an ending to it, or a beginning. More than just like snippets of scenes that might go in order someday.
Confirming that what we've been seeing in the game are recreations of real-life events. We have to continue on until we reach a computer, and it has a lot to say.
Alright, those are the 2 long tentacles.
The layers we find ourselves in, and the ciphers we have been solving. The substitution cipher is a language known as Beaver Scrap. The alphabet puzzle is called the Shakespeare cipher, the music puzzle is a Mozart cipher, and the picture puzzle is a Picasso cipher. While this information is certainly useful, I feel like it would have been more useful, a layer ago when I was banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how they worked. But no matter. We're here now, and we must go forth exploring the 3 doors available in order to move on. Technically, you can actually only explore 2 doors, but there are important audio recordings in each one, so of course I've checked them all out. 2 of them come from Connor, who describes how progress for the game is going, describing areas and characters from Shipwreck 64, and how they're going to be presented to someone called Mark later. Oh, Mark, the guy from that audio tape we heard earlier, the one with the terminally ill partner. If Cobweb Games is working on a Broadside game, and they're going to be presented to Mark later, that would mean that Mark is likely a higher-up of Broadside. But based on this 3rd recording we get from Connor, it seems like he's not the easiest guy to work with.
But is that even enough? The search must be set astronomically high. What after the thing I found?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Once again, Connor is leaving a breadcrumb trail to reveal to us the truth about what happened and the company behind it all. It seems like Connor found the footage of these deaths, the ones that you've been witnessing. I mean, I wouldn't feel safe around a guy that lets monsters like this run loose, would you? Yet he also seems to still be willing to work with him. He's not acting like he wants to expose the truth he's found. What changed for him to do so later? And speaking of monster, this particular room offers us insight into one of the characters we've not been able to identify, Bucky himself. So far, we found the victims, the devs of the game, and Mark, but the serial killer Bucky has been a mystery. However, after looking at this wall, I believe we finally have a name. On the wall, we see the words, "Who are you?" beginning with a drawing that will look familiar to those of you who cleared the puzzles in Broadside Waterway. It's a statue of Bucky. There's also 7 letters missing, just like the one we saw earlier in the hallway spelled out like Random. Random is the name of the guy inside the costume, the one who was acting strange and lashed out to his co-stars. This is where the gameplay gets a lot harder, because now we're being attacked by monster versions of 4 major Mascots that we saw in the glitch footage. It turns out these are Mascots dwellers.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
But regardless of this new threat, we are still on the hunt for lore, and it is everywhere on this floor. If you look at the walls very carefully while you're solving puzzles, you'll find notes from hardware games, and please blow a massive part of the Broadside backstory wide open. There are dozens of these notes around the level, but after just a couple, you'll start to get the picture. I was at the office.
Doesn't matter really how long
It
they are.
contained our presentation of Broadside.
Cut them there. I tried to do the 8, the same length as the body.
The contents of which were repulsive. Many different folders, so many notes, so many labels.
And then the 2 long legs look much longer.
But not just that. Cover up too. The little girl was crushed in the squirrel cruise. Quite literally, caught in the trap. But as I saw the pictures, it's as bad as it fit. And it's worse. So much worse. Not only have guests died, but employees have too. Before Studio Grounds, they owned an entire island. And on that island, at the very least, there were 3 deaths. Connor definitely saw the horrifying footage that we've seen. 3 employee deaths that happened on an island resort owned by Broadside. Cogware Games decided to recreate murders and all. But if you keep going and complete various Picasso and Mozart ciphers, as well as a few code-based puzzles that are lying around, and then you collect the batteries for the in computer, we are actually treated to a zip folder full of at least some of the files that Mike was mentioned. We have 3 folders named Olivia, Nathan, and Olivia's folder contains
Those legs are all cut
model, pictures of
and
those of human and in costume, and the audio recordings we heard, as well as this note that once again confirms that what we've witnessed in the game is 100% a recreation of what happened that night. By checking Gary's folder, we can also find the footage that we've already seen, as well as the aftermath of the corpse from being dumped in the fried. Gary is Giovanni's actor, which leaves Nathan as Walter's actor, and in his folder we finally see what was missing from the mysterious sculpture clip we heard earlier. Bucky walked over to him and beat him to death with a chair.
Those are done. I'm gonna use the real pattern, doo-dah, doo-dah. The one I made so long ago.
Oh, you brought your own art
Yeah, we always bring our own.
Yes, there it is.
To bring our own arms.
Good botch.
Yeah, it's never gonna be good. And yet, the question remains, why expose Broadside like this? I mean, sure, the company is clearly not a good company, but is that enough motivation? Connor found those files, but still seems to be willing to work with me on this game.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is also an official game after all. Broadside were paid for this.
I think that's everything for
Well,
these.
before we finish
Let's scrap
the
attic. We'll go for
video recording, shine some light on it, and show my friend
don't think I'll get the eyes on today, but we can try.
Exactly. What they promised we could do. I'm throwing the exact same amount of money I'm paying for Harley's medical bills into this game studio!
Broadside was bleeding money, which is unsurprising when you're busy, covering up murders, running TV shows, theme parks, and your own freaking private island. Plus, this person, Harley, seems to be the loved one that Mark mentioned earlier in the audio log, the one that's going to be in hospital for a long time. He's also having to pay.
Where did I put those? Right here.
So, the best plan of action is for him to come to the video, or things. For a small indie studio, losing a deal like this could cause them to completely go under. If that happens, they're likely to prevent, especially if they happen to stumble across a bunch of files that reveal to them the cover-ups and murders that the company had committed. And once we leave Layer 3, that is exactly what we see play out. Layer 4 to start with is essentially a tech demo, but use the elevator to descend and once again face a gamer's worst nightmare. Not scary monsters, no, we love that stuff. Instead, and the other resolution.
It went horribly. All that work, all for nothing. It's only a matter of time till I get their 2-week notices on my desk. Kanan, Liz has already done everything she needs. No help, no influence from Broadside.
Oh, wow. TikTok or YouTube must be absolutely dull tonight of y'all hanging out in my neck of the woods.
Only to be completely shut down and cut off from the project. Now he's mad. Outing Broadside's awful practices by recreating the past as well as all the murders that took place. Together, Broadside and Mark treated Cobweb Games. Anyway, Mark and Broadside. That could have been where the story ended. There's a demo for
I like using these blankets in the Giant Tiger. They're 50 by 60, and they're just enough for a giant squid and a couple little extras. It's cheaper than buying fleas by the foot.
I had to use so. But thanks to that demo, we now have access to the final layer, layer 5. At this point, we are introduced to a new character. And so our last task is to find this thing 10 times on the original island map. And if we do, an audio log that shows the meeting between as well as a statement from Games. We get some slides reminding us that when these details inside the game were found, the game was pulled from store shelves. Connor's efforts were once again pinned on him.
Snap. Fuck, I lost my scissors.
Just like we've seen time and time again in the Hidden Man franchises.
The majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic.
Okay, there's 11 of you. I'll come back and watch it later. Sorry, I have live videos, can't pause, and do my homework. That's okay. Get your homework done. And education is more important than watching me try to sew a straight line. But if you see what I did with my scissors, do let me know. Because, I don't know where they are right now. And I haven't gone anywhere. Okay, I literally have not gone anywhere. The pins up off the floor. I have not gone anywhere. I have not left this 10-foot radius. Where are the fucking scissors? This one's pretty good. These don't put on them and might still be okay. This is another pair of pink scissors, so not the first. But not all of them are good now. Getting them down.
He had paused and tried to hide. He tried to stop it.
Not my best, that's for sure.
The truth was finally revealed. In the end, both sides ended up losing. What an incredibly powerful story and an incredible gaming experience. However, while I feel really good about the answers we come to today, I can't help but feel there's more that I'm missing.
I should have been more gentle with this.
Audio recordings we didn't get to mention simply due to time, but even still, despite the length of this video and the hours I've spent playing the game, I actually think I've only scratched the surface. We still don't understand why Bucky's actor went on a murder spree. If this game is designed to be a recreation of the pictures of these nightmarish characters, so where do they fit into all of this? And what's the truth behind that weird... However, it's gonna have to wait until next time, because to fully understand them, these demos. So if you are interested in getting those answers, Happy hunting, theorists.
Gave me independence and set me up early. That's why I love Scotiabank. Strong and live full.
Encourages you to be Mascot. One final trick out of the Scott Cawthon playbook. They release a second game within 6 months of Ruin. Completely unexpected, but very exciting sequel to FNAF VR Don't Want It. And let me tell you, they couldn't have released a perfect time. Because at a moment of peak frustration with the fan base, when Foxy, Stans, and Bonnie Bros had all collectively crumbling into dust, this game was the cement filling in the crevices. For another couple months. And I really do mean that. Depicting a cycle of violence that shows that you're never truly out of the woods when you're in the world of FNAF. In short, probably the single most important game release in the last 6 years for this franchise. So today, we're going to put together to see what it's trying to tell us and where it's pointing the series moving forward. We're immediately thrust into a pizzeria. All bring it up. Moon, Baby, even Mystic Hippo.
What makes you so special? What makes you so special?
Considering everyone keeps asking us, we should probably have ourselves an answer ready for them, right? Well, we get a solid idea of who we might be thanks to plenty of explicit clues that are sprinkled throughout the game. First and foremost, we know that we're a Faz technician. Midway through the game, you unlock a Faz wrench that allows you to access a secret that should look familiar to anyone who played through the Ruin DLC.
What's happening?
And an inhibitor. Back in that game, these devices stopped you from being able to remove your AR-enabled Vanny mask. But that's silly. Why would that matter here? It's not like we're wearing a mask. Or are we? Sure enough, deactivating the power allows you to reach up and remove the AR mask that's been stuck to your face since you first booted up the game. Suddenly, you see that this entire time you've been inside of a derelict pizzeria, worn down, decayed. And this isn't just any ruined pizzeria, it's the FNAF 6 location, complete with a recharge station and a Freddy spaghetti bowl front and center. Not only is this just a fantastic mid-game twist that completely recontextualizes everything that you thought you knew about this game world, but it also hooks down. Why would we have something like that? Convinced that it was a trick just to get us to wear the mask and teach us the mechanics. For as strange of a concept as that is. So, we're a technician for the restaurant, sure, but that's not the only thing we know. Our next clue comes in the form of the Faz wrench. Midway through the game, you unlock this tool which allows you access to the back area of the pizzeria. Upon unlocking it, Mystic Hippo Booth says that the key is familiar to us. Mr. Gumble! We know that we're someone who's used this tool in the past. Immediately, that should bring to mind one person, Cassy's dad. Earlier this year in the Security Breach Ruin DLC, we were introduced to a young girl named Cassy, who goes on a mission to rescue her friend Gregory from the destroyed remains of the derelict.
I am, period, working on a giant squid for you. I got a giant stingray done.
It's just like my dad.
A pretty explicit connection there, and that's not all. In the Phaser Blast arcade games that Help Wanted 2, we repeatedly hear the Carney say this.
Now, you look like you put a prize for the little one.
So, we're a Phaz Tech who also happens to be a parent. Cassie's dad is literally the only character we know who truly fits the bill. But so what? What's the big deal if we're playing as Cassie's dad? It's not all that interesting. And you heard what Moon said.
Tuesday and Thursday.
We're special in some way. And let me just make this perfectly clear. All dads are special, okay? They have very important roles in their kids' lives. That's something that makes them
And I'm
very
free
special.
Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday next week.
But obviously we're talking about FNAF. The joys of parental responsibility, not what these characters are referring to. In a theory that I posted a couple months ago, I proposed that Cassie's dad wasn't just any technician. Instead, he was none other than the Bonnie Bro.
14, 15, 16,
You know, the kid that
17.
wears the Bonnie mask who helps Michael torture his crime mask, which was an odd detail when you consider that there were no other OG animatronic masks present like Freddy or Chica, that seemed to be referencing the masks that both Michael Afton and Bonnie Bro were wearing on that fateful day in 1983. Those details, coupled with a few other things, led us to the whole Bonnie Bro conclusion. But now that the full game's out, it certainly seems definitive that our theory was right. You see, towards the end of Help Wanted 2, we're given the chance to light fires next to the gravestones of some very familiar... other than that old Bonnie mask. When you collect it, we see... lost luggage. Accident of 1983. Speaking of that date, in order to find the game's secret ending, you have to unlock 6 creepy voodoo dolls.
Okay. Not redoing it.
Actions. In one, you go to sister location's private room and... Because by killing the crime child, we set William on a murderous rampage. It's a memory that we, as Bonnie Bro, have tried to repress. And that's not just me speculating. We know that Bonnie Bro has been actively trying to avoid these memories based on Mystic Hippo asking us this. It's also why when we collect one of the first secret voodoo plushies, we get a trophy in game which reads Retrieve a Memory. Basically, by playing this game and getting these secret objects, we're forcing ourselves to confront that cannot be changed, only atoned for. Which then completing the various minigames will be members of the Faz Force. Parody every IP known to mankind. Once you complete the collection,
What if dogs actually liked what's good for them? Pedigree pouch.
Their staff bots appear, attacking you. Glitch Trap is one. He's These action figures contained parts of him, his memories, his essence. By gathering them all together, we've once again made... It means that Glitch Trap lost his hold over Vanessa. He needed himself a new helper, so he lured us in, last human employee remaining, and got us to put the pieces back together to reawaken him. During burn trapping, he has enough strength to reawaken, to take control, and it's only then that the staff bots show up to kill him. Specifically, we're looking through the eyes of the one who tells Cassy to take a mask at the beginning. System. Our consciousness is now part of this map bot. We're trapped inside of it, forced to execute its commands. Glitch Trap becomes the mask that we now give our daughter as map bots. This is then when we're getting that upside into our mind. And this is eventually how the mimic gets free. To me, the way that you get this ending, it's highly symbolic. By ignoring and repressing the scars of our past actions, by not unlocking all those memory plushies, we've passed our mistakes. So it didn't just ruin the well, we wound up ruining two. Our over a big detail there. We're attacked by a bunch of corrupted staff bots, and then suddenly we're in Mapbot? Wow, it's kind of a big leap there. You know? Well, at first, I thought that we were just scanned into the system. The Mimic AI scanned our brains while we were wearing the banding mask, and boom, we're now stuck as part of the AI program running the whole Pizzaplex. But
An email from this in literally years.
there's actually another explanation. When you look at the map box for the banding mask in Ruin, it looks different from all the other staff bots that we encounter in the game. It looks side of its head. Compare that to how it's completely different. Why would that be, though? Well, it would appear as though our brain, or at the very least our organic matter, was stuck. I asked why. This seems to be such a random detail. Until you remember what a computer brain would be learning from studying. Children's incident. It's what we see Glitch Trap doing at the end of Help Wanted 1, and apparently it's what he did to Body Bro. Iris, the Afton, and the Mimic AI was Burn Trap the Mimic. It's largely been left alone. These two mimics threatening the Pizzaplex. First, there's a physical mimic that's buried down in the basement that physically walks. The second version, a more general AI program that's eventually able to get installed to run the entirety of the work there. Is this confusing? Yeah. Is it frustrating? Most definitely. But I also now see why AI works. You train it by feeding it situational data, and the data that goes in directly influences how it's going to work. Bad data going in gives you chaotic. With a simple rip off all the arms and legs and things that look humanoid. It does this over and over again, in epilogue after epilogue to each and every one of our teenage protagonists. The data that the basement AI was trained up on was simple and it was non-specific, but like a good program, it did exactly what it was told. Ripped off all those limbs. Now compare that to the Pizzaplex game. This was trained using a lot more data. It was told to copy the behavior of actual humans, and so it learned coded languages. It learned a wider series of gestures and behaviors. It learned how to play games and hang up clothing. It was far more sophisticated. So by having two different versions of the mimic in the book, what we're really seeing seeing are different ways that an AI can be trained up and how the behavior spins off of it. So how's that all affect games? Well, in Ruin, there's a key moment on the catwalks of Monte Gator Golf that showed two entities working together, but also acting separately, as they're able to argue against each other. Helpy says, I took care of the situation, to which the Mimic responds, they're cut from the same cloth. They both and based on all of that, I suspect that the Mimic Cassy runs from at the end of Ruin is a parallel for the book's basement AI, a simpler, older system that uses Gregory's voice to talk to us throughout Ruin. This one just exists and executes two simple goals: kill things and escape from the basement. But then there's the Pizzaplex AI, a more sophisticated system. This is the one that's been trained up on Afton's data specifically. It's the one that embodies itself as Glitchtrap, and it's also the one that speaks to us in the form of Helpy. And we know this to be what we see throughout Help 1 and 2. In this one game, the AI is drawing from pretty much every past animatronic, including characters like Scrap Baby and Lefty, which are odd pulls considering they're characters that were never put on display for the public. These were characters that only existed for the fake pizzeria made to entrap Afton in FNAF 6. So the fact that the system here knows about them means that they had to have come from Afton's mind. It's also why in the Helpy Hospital minigames, we see a kid's drawing of a burning pizza restaurant with Helpy running away. That's how Afton was able to escape and live on. His consciousness was contained within the Helpy AI, which was able to survive the FNAF 6 fire. And remind me again, one that one or two minigames that lead.
Learning money as a young adult can be a lot. My parents helped me open my first bank account. It gave me independence and set me up early. That's why I love Scotiabank's new preferred package for students and youth. A no-fee checking account made to help students start strong and live free. Save for the richest years.
My currently good scissors. These are the old good scissors. These are the backups of the backups.
Oh yeah, it's Helpy. And not just any Helpy either. Helpy spelled with an I. That spelling detail actually matters. Animatronic Helpy, it's spelled Ruin, that digital neural implant Helpy is spelled H-E-L-P-I. Which you know it, in the game files for Help 1 and 2, the Helpy on the projector screen is once again spelled with an I. This is Glitchtrap. Mimic Afton's and by completing his tasks and unlocking the fast force, you help him to succeed. He's now back in full control of the Pizzaplex, ready for Ruin, ready to create a new servant in Cassy to finish what Vanessa started. But if I've learned anything, see, remember that creepy plushie? Simply random series of actions. Put a code into the whack-a-mole game backwards. Make a weird soda. Down to the factory. Minigames until you get to FNAF 2, at which point you pop balloon recreations of the These get bizarre and they get convoluted in a hurry. But the main thing you need to know about them is that by that allows you to play the fourth and final version of Princess Quest's arcade cabinet. At first it plays just like your normal Princess Quest minigame. Bunnies until it's not. You suddenly find yourself standing next thing you know, the princess is standing there. Are you kidding me? This is nuts. The real world and the digital world are leaking into each other. Reach into the screen, grab your sword, and suddenly you are the princess. Who's the princess now? Glowing sword in hand, we give him our Benny mask, and in return, he gives us the Glitchtrap plushie from Help 1 and 1. And this is where things go really off the rails. Out of nowhere, the sister location elevator appears. Hop in, and suddenly it takes us inside of a giant claw machine with a giant Vanny staring in at us. We offer up the Glitchtrap plushie, revealing the true Glitchtrap. She crushes him and then fades into darkness. Doing so unlocks the trophy named Consequences. The description reads, system threats found, repair complete. So, what was all that? Well, actually it seems pretty explicit. Glitchtrap was the system threat. By crushing him, he's been deleted, and the wider AI system's been replaced. Who won? Except, is that possible? Did I just say that the other ending showed us the start of ruin? For that game to exist, which we know it does, Glitchtrap has to survive here. So is this secret ending not canon then? Just a cool reveal with no substance? No, actually, I don't believe so. For the first time ever in this franchise's history, I, Matt Pat, believe that both endings were canon. Let me explain. I do think that we're destroying Glitchtrap with any ending,
One
but
tentacle.
I'm not exactly sure it's a system-wide removal. Instead, I suspect this ending is specifically about Vanessa herself.
I'll just work
We
on
know
these.
since the original
Come to me.
Help that Vanessa, Glitchtrap, and Princess Quest have all been inextricably connected. For those of you who don't remember, the Princess Quest minigame originated back in the 2D version of Help Wanted, where they needed the game to replace the original mechanic of piecing together the missing 16 tapes from Tape Room. Here, we watch as Vanessa, the princess, falls victim to Glitchtrap. Defeat Princess Quest 3, which shows Glitchtrap being defeated and Vanessa walking out of the pizza box free, leaving the Vanny mask behind. So the fact that we're now playing Princess Quest again tells me that we're not fighting to remove Glitchtrap from the Pizzaplex system. Instead, we're yet again fighting specifically to find Vanessa. These games have always been about Vanessa and Glitchtrap. I wouldn't expect 4 to deviate from that pattern. Even my old buddy Candy Cadet's trying to tell us that this game is about finishing Vanessa's story. Throughout Help Wanted 2, you collect coins that can be traded to Candy Cadet for pieces of the story. His second one tells about a young woman that's been lured in by a friendly voice, only for it to have been a witch that tries to eat her.
Now let me tell you a little story about a young woman who, when she was little, was led into a dark forest by a witch and almost died.
She manages to escape, but she's permanently scarred in the process. When she's older, she returns and is met by a young boy who offers to help.
When she had grown, she sought revenge on the witch and entered the forest again with a date. She was taken at the mouth of the forest by a young boy who offered to help guide her through the darkness. She welcomed the help and followed the young boy over the river, through the jagged trees, and toward a small house. She called the house. The oven door closed. The witch would finally have her meal.
This right here, this is Vanessa's story. Cut and dry. She was lured in by what she thought was a friendly voice, telling her to gather the tapes to stop Glitchtrap, only for Glitchtrap to then take control. She does escape, but is permanently scarred by this. She has the Glitchtrap virus inside of her. It's not full control, but it's definitely there, which is what we hear about in emails from Knaf AR and the retro CDs from Security Breach.
I compartmentalized him. He's locked away.
She had compartmentalized him. He wasn't in full control, at least not yet. She then comes back to try to get Glitchtrap herself, but runs into a young boy who seems like he's going to help her, only to lure her deeper under Glitchtrap's control. By the time she transfers to the Pizzaplex, Vanessa's tone has changed in her therapy days.
I'm needed somewhere else now.
We see the same thing in the FNAF AR email. She's no longer in control. Glitchtrap has completely taken over, and it's all thanks to the only little boy that we know of, Gregory. Thanks to his retro CDs, we know that he was meeting a person in a bunny costume.
You're talking to someone.
Hello, Niall. Sorry, you're probably already gone by now. Thanks for stopping in.
Gregory is
If y'all could slap me with a thumbs up before you head out tonight, that'd be appreciated, guys.
This Candy Cadet story, GGY, the fact that he was clearly working with Danny before the events of Security Breach, he is not.
Yeah, I like this color. It's not quite the same as the Snowflakes, but it's close enough. That'll do for me.
Even cut lines of dialogue from Help Wanted 2 seem to support.
I'm making a giant squid. If anybody's wondering what the fuck I'm doing. Limbs, a body, a butt, and a couple of big old eyeballs.
Vanessa is back to being more in control, but she knows that a small part of him remains. The Glitchtrap plushie that started it all back in Help Wanted. We also get lines like, the memories are free, use the token, bring him to me, referencing the memory plushies that we're collecting, the glitched Princess Quest token, and then being told to bring the plushie to her so that she can crush it herself once and for all. Destroying Glitchtrap inside of her mind allows that other persona, Vanny, to finally fade to darkness. Vanessa is truly free. And we know this to be true because after this ending, when you go back to the main hub screen, Puppy's gone, replaced by a boy claiming that the Fazbear pizza tastes like real cheese. Delicious for him, but even tastier is the fact that Puppy's been purged. Glitchtrap is gone. At least he's gone from this version.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are the short tentacles. This is the long one. We'll finish this guy.
to Vanessa. She's no longer a part of the story. Her battle's over. We saved her completely. But in closing out her story, the cycle also repeats. Yet again, we have ourselves an innocent girl, this time named Cassy, being lured in by a seemingly friendly voice, right? But in reality, it's all a trap. Thanks to that occipital implant, she now has teleported as a part of her mind, just like Vanessa did with Glitch Trap. And now she's wearing the mask more and more frequently, again like Manny. In short, it's been passed on. Cassie is just Vanessa 2.0. Gone is the era of Vanessa and Glitch Trap. Long live Cassie and the Mimic AI. At this point, the only question is, what's it truly going to take to break this cycle once and for all? But hey, I'm going to continue digging for deeper lore and winning all these prizes. What do we got? Headshot. I wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to win some prizes of your very own. There's actually a chance to win $10,000. That's all thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, SoFi. If you don't already know, SoFi is the all-in-one personal finance app that allows you to bank, borrow, and invest all in one place. And that could be useful as we wrap up the holiday season. Buying presents for family and friends? Yeah, that adds up fast. Just need to consider that Amy's in charge of my Black Friday shop.
Everybody this Christmas is getting baked goods and a little knick-knack off Temu, like a hummingbird beer or something.
You're only going to be offering savings accounts with about like 0.46% interest. Literally pennies. Money would be better off stored in your mattress. Thankfully, SoFi offers a pretty massive 4.6% APY with direct deposit. That is up to 10 times the national savings average. And the best part is, you don't even have to do anything. You just drop your money into the account, and in just 5 weeks with direct deposit, you'll have earned more interest than you if you're new to SoFi, they'll even help kickstart your savings by giving you up to $300 when you sign up for direct deposit. So you don't even have to have savings when you start. But if you really want to give those initial savings a boost, then you'll want to get your hands on that juicy $10,000 that SoFi is giving away as a part of this SoFi.com/Game Theory, or scan the QR code that's on screen right now and sign up for a SoFi checkings and savings account. I always love it when brands do stuff like this. Gives us a chance to give back to the community. Not only does it make me feel like a mini Mr. Beast, but just knowing that this is going to help one of you loyal peers that's out there save for college, or buy a house, or kickstart your next dream project, that right there, it brings a big old smile to my face. So remember, link is in the description, or you can always scan the QR code on screen right now for a chance to win that insane amount of money. Thanks again to SoFi for sponsoring this episode, and as always, remember, my friends, it's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
He did it so well, too. It's just on the wrong fucking side.
Camera Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Sarah. Crafted with unique notes and bold soaring flavors. Experience a taste of these. Nespresso and Sama Origins.
Meet your moments with enticing offers on now at Lincoln. Don't miss out.
Nothing brings a family together like Black Diamond, Canada's #1 most trusted cheddar cheese brand.
What if the FNAF books were canon? It's a question that's torn the fanbase apart for years, and now we've had an update to help on it too. That seems to be telling us that the answer is yes. But what would that change? What theories would this ruin? And what does it mean we can expect from Secret of the Mimic this year? Today, we're going to find out. Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's always looking at FNAF from a new perspective. You may remember that last time I was getting a little frustrated with Scott and his clarity in this franchise. It is fun to be able to solve these small loose threads, but we're still unable to use those to figure out the bigger mysteries. What's the deal with us? A couple of new pieces of information to answer the biggest question in the franchise's recent history. Are the books canon? They charity live stream, and as per usual, he got special access to
There
some
we go.
Emily's gameplay
Much better.
and teasers. One was a new version of 5 Laps at Freddy's, the weird spin-off kart racer thing. And while playing, a new billboard was discovered. It was advertising a company called Murray Co. and their brand new robotic vacuum cleaner. In the story The Mimic from Tales from the Pizzaplex, we have a character called Edwin Murray who builds a robotic vacuum cleaner. It goes on to be bought by Fast Food. Mimic, a big bad that we teaser for a Help Wanted 2 update where we get to see the Mimic's costume model up close. But the important detail was actually in the corner. A white tiger with the same story, The Mimic. Edwin's son David has a white tiger plushie, and the Mimic tiger rocking storyteller. The Mimic is heavily associated with a white tiger and eyes. The update came out, and it became even
Pardon me, but
this was all to do with the Mimic. The tiger plushie was unlocked using the 90 of the Mimic demo from Harold West taking place in, and in the Mimic story, factory where he was making animatronics. As you might imagine, this set the pace of the life. It seemed like confirming the canonicity of the books. Before us, the strongest connection to the books taken in the timeline was just the Mimic existing down there. Now, with Edward existing a white tiger character only ever seen in the books at this point, it feels like more than ever we are being shown that the games and the books may coexist in the same universe. But if that's the case, what does that change? We've been theorizing about this franchise for a long time now, and we've never really considered the books to be canon to the game timeline. So, if the books are now being shown as canon, I wondered what dominoes begin to fall. Which of those theories get debunked? What parts of the story would we have a new perspective on? And what could that mean for future?
Time is
Grab
up.
your vanity masks once again, theorists, because we've got to take a look at FNAF in a whole new way and ask the question, what if the books were canon? Let's start with the series of books that are most tied to this modern era of FNAF. Tales from the Pizzaplex. In case you don't know, this is a series of 8 books, each containing 3 short stories and an epilogue, with all the epilogues combining into one continuous story across all 8 books. That gives us 25 full stories, all of which take place in a world where most commonly it's some version of Pizzaplex. You may have
all
seen
the legs are
term
done.
Tales games
I gotta get the butt done. The butt needs a little bit more stability.
Boils down to these 25 tale stories being completely one-to-one canon to the games. Fortunately, you don't need to know all 25 stories inside and out in order to get to grips with how Tales would change the game's lore. There are a few stories that made small changes, but mostly it's just to provide clarity on parts of the story we weren't sure about. Stories like Help Wanted, where we learn about Steve Snodgrass, the game developer who made the original 4 FNAF games for so we find out he's making them based purely on the rumours surrounding his business and his own memories. Plus, his mind is being affected by this little high-pitched noise, distorting the reality of idea since the Help Wanted game.
Fazbear Entertainment hired the game developer. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand, it's an elaborate cover-up.
But what this changes is the
I do have a couple like this, actually. She said.
After the Help Wanted game, despite being told that these were in-universe games, it was unclear how one-to-one they were with reality. This story tells us that they were being made by someone who didn't know the true stories and whose mind was slowly being worn down. This allows for Scott and Steel Wool to retcon certain details from those games without them really being retcons. They're just something Steve made up. Obviously, if a modern entry confirms a detail from FNAF 1 to 4, then we can be sure it's likely true. And we actually get a good example of this. Ditophobia. This was the final story from Tales from the Pizzaplex, and it involves a character named Rory, living in a house that is described exactly like the FNAF 4 house. Rory believes is a kid with a family, but as time goes on, it's revealed he's not a kid, he's grown up. The house is disgusting, and the entire place has been filled with a hallucinogenic gas coming from the underground bunker. Circus babies. We've wondered for a long time what was causing the nightmares in FNAF 4, whether it was sound illusion discs or just the overwhelming sense of fear and guilt. But if these books are canon, the answer becomes clear. The nightmares are real, but it's the hallucinogenic gas that truly brings them to life. So that's hallucinogenic gas, sound illusion discs, and don't forget we have VR and AR in this world. There are 3 reality-altering tools on the table for this franchise. Basically, we can't trust anything we see in the games anymore. Then there's the more modern stories like GGY. This one focuses on a kid named Greg that is hacking into the Pizzaplex animatronics, leaving high scores in all the arcade machines, and is getting rid of any counselors, or anyone else that gets too close to the truth. With his arcade and hacking sign-offs being GGY, it's almost certain that his full name is Gregory, as in our Gregory from Security Breach, which also makes Gregory Patient 46, the mysterious child from the therapy CDs we collect during Security Breach that also has a habit of getting rid of therapists. The final point of clarity here is that Greg refers to himself as the wizard's favourite apprentice during the story, as well as using the handle Dr. Rabbit, which feels like a mighty big hint that Gregory is working for Glitch Trap, just like Vanessa. To be fair, we've actually been on board with this idea for a while, so it hasn't really changed any of our theories. But if the books are canon, it just solidifies it more as fact rather than theory. The only thing we have to wonder now is whether he's still under Glitch Trap's control. Help Wanted 2 and Security Breach seem to be telling us that Vanessa is now free of Glitch Trap, and in Ruin, they are implied to be working together to help Cassy. So is Gregory also free now, or is he just playing the long con? As I've said, those 3 stories don't really change much about the lore. They provide some clarity and add depth to certain lore aspects that were otherwise just dropped on us with no real explanation. But it doesn't really derail anything. However, that isn't the case for every story. And now we have to talk about the big 3. The Mimic, the Storyteller, and the Echoes. And if these stories are canon, it causes a drastic shift in how we look at this modern era of FNAF. A quick recap for those who don't know. These stories focus around the latest big bad of the series, the Mimic. It starts with Edwin Murray and his son, Edwin is a robotics genius whose company was born so his job was to turn the original Freddy's costumes into animatronics. He ends up building a out of spare parts, and it's designed to mimic and play with his son. So one day, his son runs out of the factory into the road and is hit by he dies. The Mimic continues causing Edwin to get angry and beat the Mimic to a metallic. Edwin then disappears, leaving Fazbear to come and collect their property from Edwin's factory. The Mimic begins murdering those who come to collect. They do eventually manage to continue while they begin construction of the Pizzaplex on top of the FNAF 6 location, a version of the Mimic alongside other animatronics that will make up the Boomrock band. The Mimic is programmed to help clear the endos that remain inside, keeping their arms and heads up. But it doesn't just stop at the endos. Yep. Construction workers begin leading to the location, trapping it inside the FNAF 6 location beneath the Pizzaplex. Many years later, once the Pizzaplex is up and running, the Mimic software is used to the Storyteller, a layabout tree that Pizzaplex, and it's designed to create new fun stories to play out, except it ends up making the animatronics into more childish and more dangerous versions of themselves. Edwin returns and tries to stop the Mimic, only to die in process. So the Storyteller later being removed, but the Mimic program remains. There is a lot to unpack there, and a number of theories that go out the window if these books do end up being canon.
Well, that's when I put in one up stuff, right?
Of the Mimic. Up until this point, we've been theorizing that Edwin was meant to be a parallel for Henry. Both were involved in the early days of Fazbear. We even theorized that Henry had been bought out by Afton, much like Edwin was. Both made the earliest animatronics, and both died, and they took their agony That led to several theories about how Henry originally created the Mimic, and that it was originally made to be part of their traveling service alongside Henry and William. But if the books are canon, that cannot be the case, as it's very clearly Edwin that created the mimic. Now, that's not to say the mimic couldn't have been used as part of the circus. We see Jackie from Secret of the Mimic is very much circus themed, but it just wasn't the reason it was created. Instead, that would have just been a retroactive use for it. We also had a theory about how the mimic had been locked underground for a very long time, at least since the 1980s. After Henry disappeared, Afton went to collect what belonged to Fazbear, including the mimic, and then used it to help create the Funtime animatronics, only for it to all go wrong and for it to kill his daughter. He then locked the mimic underground and created a blue bunny Mexes to keep it locked away. Again, if the books are canon, this theory cannot be true, as the mimic doesn't arrive at the Pizzaplex until construction on the Pizzaplex has already begun. There is still a chance that the mimic was used by Afton to create the Fun Times, as they go to collect the mimic its creation sometime in the 70s, way before Afton's own spring of Canon. It just to make Afton go, maybe this isn't such a good idea, which I would say feels strange, but then again, this is the guy who started his own son with nightmare animatronics, so it sadly tracks. The books also reveal who is trying to revive.
Here we go. All right.
Your fave.
That is gonna be.
Starting at $9.99. Dips for less. Trips.
That's still touching the floor, so that makes this a solid. I don't know how tall this floor is. How the
Now bring more to the table.
measuring tape.
Chicken, that is. Served in habanero, barbecue crispy chicken, and cilantro lime. Mealtime differently with Tim's loaded bowls. Now with more seasoned chicken.
And turns out it's not an important or relevant character like Miss like we theorized about in our FNAF timeline.
Okay, I'll finish it. I'll measure it when it's finished.
To see my updated version of this. Anyway, instead, it's a random businessman called Mr. Burrows, and it turns out the reason the Pizzaplex was built on top of physics and the reason the Mimic was given access to the Pizzaplex systems wasn't for some big master plan with Afton's old computer chips and burnt corpse. It was just a dumb business move made by someone who knew nothing about anything in order to achieve the main goal that you might expect from a modern CEO, profits. And because Mr. Burrow dies alongside Edward after installing the storyteller, which has clearly been removed by the time of security breach, that would imply that the messages we saw about Vanessa's hiring, despite her lack of qualifications, were almost certainly the Mimic's doing. Vanessa was possessed by the Mimic, aka Glitch Trap, and with Mr. Burrows dead, the Mimic had full control of Fazbear's systems, including emails. So when it says that her recommendation came from the top, it was likely the Mimic using Mr. Burrows' email to put its plan into motion. But what is the Mimic's plan? Well, at this point, it's just software. If it truly wants to continue Afton's legacy, it's going to need a body, and it has one just beneath the Pizzaplex. But this is where one of the big criticisms of the books being canon comes from. While there is clearly a Mimic under the Pizzaplex in the games, it doesn't appear to be the Mimic 2 that we read about in the epilogues. In the epilogues, it's a black, almost gooey, spider-like thing, transforming into whatever shape it needs. But then in Ruin, we got this thing, an endo made up of the most random assortment of parts that walks with a limp. These two things don't feel like they're the same threatening creature, but if we think about it and we do consider the books to be canon, I think I might have an answer for this. By the end of the epilogues, the Mimic is destroyed, spring-locked by a jester costume. If the Mimic program wants to use this body, it would need to be repaired. Enter Vanessa, and thanks to GGY, likely Gregory, who can then use Glamrock Freddy to clear the path down into the depths, into the FNAF 6 building, and to where the Mimic's destroyed body lies dormant. From here, they would do what we initially suspected Vanessa was doing with Burn Trap. They would repair him using a mix-mash of endoskeleton parts, anything they could find, in order to put it back together. That could be why we see it limping before the chase scene. It's either still partially damaged, or it's just because the parts aren't its own, but a random assortment that's not fully balanced or calibrated. That would then tie into the ending we got from the new Help Wanted 2 update. We see Mexes driven away in a van that looks suspiciously like the one Gregory drove in one of the security breach endings. Mexes wasn't always underneath 6. After the events of security breach, it seems like both Gregory and Vanessa have been freed from the Mimic's control, but they know what's down there. They get back together, and because of that, they know how to stop it. What we're seeing is Gregory and Vanessa driving Mexes to the Pizzaplex, collecting it from the same place the mimic came from. The MCM toy store is factory Edwin's. That's why Gregory's backpack and walkie-talkie end up down with the mimic, because they were installing Mexes to keep it black. Only for the mimic to learn Gregory's voice and trick Cassy. What all of this proves is actually something we theorized a very long time ago about the future of this franchise. One that we've actually been quite disappointed hadn't seemed to have come to fruition since then. The soft reboot of the franchise. By making Edwin canon to the games, and with the mimic being the true identity behind Glitchtrap, it removes the parts both Afton and Henry played in our theories. We finally the Steel Wool era of games still uses the same rules and world as before, but it's more about the knock-on effects of those old characters' actions, rather than their direct input. And that's great. Ultimate Custom Night felt like a great ending to the story. Now, in retrospect, we can truly split the series up and treat this as a new era separate from those original stories. However, if Tales is canon, this is changes. There's one more story, one more domino that has to fall, and the story is called Frailty. Here we meet a girl called Cassy, who has a special metallic necklace that when she strips off shavings and puts them on dying patients at a hospital, they get better. At the end of the story, she uses the last of this necklace and becomes a pile of scrap metal. The powers of this necklace are nearly identical to the power we saw from the necklace given to Sarah by Eleanor in the story. Sarah was eventually turned into a pile of scrap metal, so while she wore the necklace, she appeared completely human. The reason that this is such a big deal isn't from Tales from the Pizzaplex. It's from Fazbear Frights, the previous collection of short stories. And if Eleanor becomes canonical, then at the very least, every story connected to her also becomes canonical. Agony would become canon. Time traveling bullpits would be canon. And the Afton amalgamation, or the Agony, the thing everyone said Matt was insane for even suggesting to be part of the game's timeline, would indeed be canon. This idea, the fan base has dubbed Stitchline games, because they all tie into the epilogue surrounding a mysterious character called the Stitch. The Stitch is an endoskeleton that contains the souls of two children, Jake and Andrew. And Andrew is the more interesting one in terms of canonicity. Andrew was killed by Willie Hutch, 6 missing kids that were killed in 1985. Because of this, Andrew is angry, vengeful even, to the point where in The Man in Room 1280, he keeps a burning alive just to torture him inside his mind.
Oh, you fucking whore!
Almost as if it's exactly
Fuck you! You dirty, cheap $4 bitch! $8 house.
That would mean that Andrew's spirit is more likely the one torturing Afton. The Man in Room 1280 and Ultimate Custom Nights are happening at